Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga. Chapter 3856. The Legend of Immortality. Upon seeing the members of the Wood God tribe, a ball of fury ignited in his heart. If it weren't for Lin Ling, his heaven-crushing alliance would have long since devoured the Wood God tribe. Your Majesty, this has nothing to do with you. Fire God King, although our Water God clan is at loggerheads with your clan, we hope that you won't interfere in this matter. After all, that brat killed our princess. This enmity is absolutely irreconcilable. The pride of our Water God clan cannot be trampled on. After recovering from their shock, the people from the Gold God clan and the Water God clan spoke up. The 5 major clans lived in the Kaiyuan River. Although their relationship was weak, they believed that the 3 major clans would give them face. After all, helping them was better than helping humans. Brat, I don't know how you summoned them, but you are underestimating the history of our 5 races. We are all descendants of a god. How can someone of your filthy bloodline drive a wedge between us? An elder from the Golden God tribe pointed at Lin Ling and bellowed furiously. These words also made the people of the Duan clan's alliance feel relieved. That's right, they were too nervous before. It turned out that these people might not help Lin Ling. They might even join the camp to kill Lin Ling. When they thought of this, the corners of their mouths curled into sneers. Moreover, this laughter was like a plague that drifted further and further away, causing many people to roar with laughter. They were obviously watching a good show. He also believed that the Golden God clan would be able to convince the other 3 clans. However, in the crowd, only Wanyan Shiji had an ugly expression. He felt as if he had eaten shit. Because only he knew that this was impossible. It was unknown what kind of bewitching drug Lin Ling had used, but he had already bewitched the 3 great clans. Lord Envoy. At this moment, Her Majesty the Queen finally approached Lin Ling. When she arrived before Lin Ling, she bowed and saluted him. She no longer had the majesty of a queen. She was more like a servant. What the hell? What happened? Seeing Her Majesty's obedient appearance, the Gold God Elder rubbed his eyes fiercely as if he had seen a ghost. This was because he was all too familiar with the Wood Gods. This group of fellows had their eyes on the top of their heads and were boundlessly arrogant. Not to mention humans, they even looked down on the Gold Gods. And it was said that this atmosphere came from Her Majesty the Queen. Because Her Majesty the Queen possessed the purest and most flawless wood spirit chi, it led to her arrogance. But now the Queen, who was full of disdain for the Golden God tribe, was actually bowing to Lin Ling. Could it be that the beauty likes Lin Ling? The humans were also shocked. Following that, many handsome men were so jealous that their eyes were spitting fire. Such a beautiful Her Majesty actually belonged to Lin Ling? Damn it, this guy must have used some kind of beauty trap. Her Majesty the Queen has obviously been charmed by him. The Duan clan's experts also spoke up one after another. Even though they were already in their 50s, they were still extremely jealous at this moment. There was even a white-bearded old monster who was unconvinced and said angrily, "The heavens are blind. I'm so handsome, but Her Majesty the Queen doesn't like me." Of course, others also glared at him fiercely, but in the end, they all shook their heads. Although they were also jealous that Lin Ling had gained the Queen's favor, at least Lin Ling was indeed a little handsome. He was not something that the old man could compare to. King of the Wood Gods, you're an insult to the status of our 5 clans. Among the Water Gods, a blue-haired woman shouted. She was so angry that her body trembled. And she was the Queen of the Water God Lord. She also did not expect the Queen of the Wood Gods to be so cheap and humiliate them. However, at this moment, the Dwarf of the Stone Gods also arrived. He ran wildly towards Lin Ling, causing everyone to frown. This dwarf, could it be that he also liked Lin Ling? However, this was obviously impossible. They immediately shook their heads again. It was normal for Her Majesty the Queen to like Lin Ling. However, the bad-tempered king of the dwarves was a stubborn old man who loved drinking. How could he like a man? Lord Totem. However, when the king of the dwarves arrived in front of Lin Ling, he also bowed. Moreover, he was deeply afraid that Lin Ling would be snatched away by the Wood Gods, so he also imitated Her Majesty the Queen's bow. However, Her Majesty the Queen's slender waist was very feminine when she bowed. As for him, a short old man, bowing like this was a little disgusting. However, this still frightened everyone. Everyone's eyes widened. Could it be that the Dwarf King also liked Lin Ling? They were instantly dumbfounded and almost vomited blood from disgust. Where does this guy's charm come from? Even the short old man is charmed by him? Duan Wuhan felt as if he had eaten a fly. This was because he had been secretly competing with Lin Ling all this time. However, in terms of talent he had lost. In terms of strength, he had lost again. And now, in terms of charm, he had lost again. Lin Ling was simply a beauty killer. No, even the system was charmed by him. Moreover, even the beautiful girl beside him was staring at Lin Ling curiously at this moment. This pissed him off. Lord Totem. However, the shock didn't end there. The patriarch of the Fire God tribe also came and saluted Lin Ling. 3. Fuck, what kind of bewitching potion did Lin Ling use? Moreover, as far as I know, the old man from the Fire God clan doesn't seem to get close to women. The Water God clan was too familiar with the Fire God clan, so everyone was shocked. Isn't this nonsense? Lin Ling is a man. The Fire God clan leader doesn't get close to women, but that doesn't mean he doesn't get close to men. However, someone from the Golden God clan immediately retorted. At this moment, the two clans looked at each other as if they had been slapped 3 times. Their faces were full of confusion. Lin Ling ignored them and immediately released a large number of dragons and evil spirits. In this way, Lin Ling's army arrived and fought against those who wanted to kill him from afar. Lin Ling didn't speak, but his eyes were cold. However, everyone knew what Lin Ling meant. It was still the same sentence. Although Lin Ling couldn't escape death, he would definitely drag a few of them down with him. Everyone hurriedly looked at the 3 clans, then looked at the dragon demon and other monsters. One by one, they gritted their teeth. This was because they knew that if they really wanted to kill Lin Ling, they would definitely lose a lot of people. This anger and powerlessness was the most intense for the people from the Duan clan because this was actually the best opportunity to kill Lin Ling. However, things were always changing, which made them so angry that their teeth itched. The 4th leader of the God Slayer Alliance, the son of the devil, Lin Ling, was known as an immortal legend in JoJo. They now had a deep understanding of it. Feng City was undoubtedly a little quiet at this moment. The 2 sides faced each other from afar. Interesting. I have so many pasts. Why should I be afraid of the future? Chapter 3857. He wanted a person. Sir Yuan Venerate, this person is very despicable. A lady beside him said fiercely. Hee hee. Although this person is very interesting, an ant is still an ant. Little Tian, if you want him, I will give him to you. That person nodded. He was actually the Yuan Venerate martial god who was about to leave. He had originally been about to leave, but the scene in Plentiful City had piqued his curiosity. Most importantly, the lady beside him actually knew that person and had a great enmity with him. Therefore, he had decided to help this lady along the way. Thank you, senior. The lady immediately smiled. Although her smile seemed innocent, it was filled with resentment. And she was none other than the Heaven Princess. Her backer was Miao Shen's true inheritance. Although Yuan Venerate martial gods were very powerful, they weren't proficient in the path of boundaries. Therefore, he had helped Princess Tian in an attempt to get Miao Shen's true inheritance to help him set up a martial god boundary on the continent. Lin Ling, your undying legend is going to be destroyed in my hands. Princess Tian muttered to herself. At the moment, no one in Plentiful City wanted to go all out, so they didn't make a move for the time being. They could only glare furiously at Lin Ling. However, at that moment, a chuckle was heard. Unrestrained sword martial god. Can I ask you for a person? This voice stunned the unrestrained sword martial god, who immediately became curious. However, the Yuan Venerate martial god chuckled. I want that little fellow. The unrestrained sword martial god frowned when he heard this. Everyone in Plentiful City also shuddered. The Yuan Venerate martial god wanted Lin Ling? Because he offended my friend, so he wants to vent his anger on my friend's behalf. The Yuan Venerate martial god didn't hide anything. Vent his anger? Everyone's eyes lit up. They instantly guessed that this wasn't as simple as just venting his anger. Perhaps the Yuan Venerate martial god would kill Lin Ling. At the moment, even Lin Ling frowned. He had never imagined that after all these twists and turns, the Yuan Venerate martial god would want to harm him. Speaking of which, This was the first time he had met a Yuan Venerate martial god. Why was the latter targeting him? Little brat, there are many choices in a person's life. Some choices may seem carefree, but they can inadvertently kill you. Humans are not easy. If you want to rise up from the ordinary, then you have to face hardships at every step, and not do whatever you want. The Yuan Venerate martial god stood at the edge of the massive continent in the sky and spoke to Lin Ling calmly. That sentence seemed calm, but it was actually a reprimand and a pointer. He was clearly saying that although Lin Ling was immortal, he was unruly and unruly. He had taken the wrong path and should have been like a Yuan Venerate martial god. He should have kept a low profile and bided his time. Only then would he have been able to rise abruptly. Lin Ling was silent. He looked up and saw a figure on the edge of the huge continent. It was Princess Tian. He instantly understood. Although he didn't know why a Yuan Venerate martial god was targeting him, it was obvious that this had something to do with Princess Tian. You seem to have something to say. Say it. I, a Yuan Venerate, don't like to pressure others. The Yuan Venerate martial god smiled faintly. His words finally caused Lin Ling to look him in the eye. He took a deep breath and calmly said, "There are 3,000 paths of martial arts, and no one can say for sure which path is right and which path is wrong. Senior martial god, for you to jump to conclusions like this, your vision is too narrow." Feng Du was shocked when he heard this. No one had expected that Lin Ling would actually dare to refute a Yuan Venerate martial god. The Yuan Venerate martial god was also stunned. Then he laughed even louder. "Although I don't know everything, I can be sure that the path you have taken is wrong. An unruly person will eventually kick an iron plate. Regardless of whether it is right or wrong, I will walk the path that belongs to me. I will not regret the choice that I have made." However, Lin Ling opposed him with equal harshness. His words made the laughter of the Yuan Venerate martial god become softer. However, Lin Ling spoke once again. "Senior Yuan Venerate, you don't have to lecture me like a senior. I know that you have evolved from a mortal to a deity, so you must have boundless pride in your heart. You seem to want to tell the world that mortals can also become deities. However, although this seems like guidance, in reality, your words and actions are just to satisfy your own sense of accomplishment. I also know that the path you have chosen is to conceal your strength, bide your time, and consolidate at every step. However, because of this, you have suffered countless grievances in your life. Therefore, on the day you succeed, you want to tell the world that you are right. You also want to make all those who have looked down on you, humiliated you, and trampled on you regret and be shocked by your accomplishments. You are trying to express this." When Lin Ling's voice floated out, Feng Du exploded once again. The Yuan Venerate martial god trembled. Even though he didn't admit it, deep down, he knew that Lin Ling had touched on his innermost feelings. This kid was actually so sharp-tongued. "However, I can also understand the path you have chosen. After all, this martial path is indeed safer. However, let me tell you something. Although the path I have chosen isn't as safe as yours and I have provoked more people than you, I am open and above board. If I'm unhappy, I will do it. Life is fleeting. Why do you have to suffer so much? 10,000 years is too long. Seize every minute." As Lin Ling's last sentence was spoken, countless ripples appeared in everyone's hearts. 10,000 years was too long. Seize every minute. This was the path Lin Ling had chosen. Even if he had provoked too many people, he would not shirk his duty. The Yuan Venerate martial god who had reprimanded Lin Ling could only endure the humiliation and be trampled on by countless people. This was his martial path. "You are right, but you also have to face a life and death calamity," the Yuan Venerate martial god said icily. It was obvious that he was furious. When have martialists ever been safe? If you want to be safe, you might as well go home and plant sweet potatoes. As for a life and death calamity, only cowards would not dare face it. Lin Ling said icily as he looked into the distance. Only cowards would not dare face it. These words were like thunder that struck the Yuan Venerate martial god's heart. Indeed, the martial path he had chosen was safer. He had avoided great winds and waves, not caused any disasters, and finally made a name for himself. However, from another perspective, wasn't this saying that he was afraid of the winds and waves and was a coward? The Yuan Venerate martial god's body trembled uncontrollably. However, Lin Ling didn't stop speaking. As a martial god, you shouldn't be teaching others how to take refuge or endure silently. Instead, you should be teaching people how to face difficulties and how to shoulder them. This is great fearlessness, great perseverance, and a perfect heart of the martial path. However, you are angry and ashamed because of my words. Your heart of the martial path is clearly not perfect. This sentence was a direct reprimand. The people of Plentiful City gasped. They all thought that Lin Ling had gone crazy. At the same time, a terrifying murderous aura quietly spread down from the sky. Chapter 38:58. Find someone. This fellow is indeed extraordinarily courageous. Everything is as he said. Great perseverance and fearlessness. This must be his martial path. Many people started to admire him. If Lin Ling had relied on his mouth, then Lin Ling had used his actions to prove himself. He wasn't afraid even when facing a Yuan venerate martial god. This was Lin Ling's martial path. Are you trying to say that your martial path is correct and mine is wrong? After a moment of silence, the Yuan venerate martial god suddenly spoke up. There are 3,000 martial paths, and everyone has their own way of thinking. I won't change anyone's way of thinking, and no one can change me either. I can only say that there is no common ground between people with different paths. Lin Ling spoke indifferently, neither haughty nor humble. These words represented Lin Ling's lofty pride. Even though a Yuan venerate martial god could kill him with a single finger, Lin Ling believed that a Yuan venerate martial god was just so. Lin Ling's status wasn't any lower than his. Unfettered sword martial god. Can you give this sharp-tongued brat to me? After all, this is your territory. The Yuan venerate martial god smiled and looked into the distance. If he had previously attacked Lin Ling because of Princess Tian, then he wanted to attack him now. Lin Ling's eyes turned cold when he heard this. What was a deity transformation? What a joke! How could a Yuan venerate martial god represent mortals? He was just a hypocrite who was afraid of death. He had only managed to become a peak martial god by luck. On the other side, the unfettered sword martial god smiled faintly as he looked at Lin Ling. This also made Feng Du fall silent. After all, this was the unfettered sword martial god's territory. Therefore, Lin Ling's life depended on the unfettered sword martial god. The unfettered sword martial god was a god-grade swordsman. Swordsmen were the most arrogant. Perhaps Lin Ling's martial path was the same as his, so the unfettered sword martial god might help him. Unrestrained sword martial god. You mustn't agree. He definitely won't agree. After all, they have only met by chance. Even if the Freedom Sword martial deity appreciates talent, he should know that Lin Ling has offended many people. Therefore, the Freedom Sword martial deity will definitely not help him. That's hard to say. Do you still remember the first disciple of the unrestrained sword martial god? That's the city lord of the Heaven Sword City. It said that the unrestrained sword martial god saved him from the hands of the many enemies of the city lord and took him in as a disciple. Many people began to discuss this matter spiritedly. They all thought that Lin Ling had once again become the focus of attention. Even the two top martial gods had moved for him. However, they did not believe that undying demon's son Lin Ling would not die. The Duan clan couldn't kill him, the Golden God race couldn't kill him, and Wanyan Shirshir couldn't kill him. Could it be that even Yuan venerates and martial gods couldn't kill him? Speaking of which, this kid really suits my taste. The unfettered sword martial god finally spoke. His words made everyone's hearts pound. Those who wanted to kill Lin Ling sighed and cursed the heavens for being unfair. After all, Lin Ling had once again escaped a calamity. There was no justice in this world. Ha! The Yuan venerate martial god frowned. He was a little unhappy, but if the unfettered sword martial god refused to hand Luo Yunyang over, he would have no other choice for the time being. I have always believed that courage is a symbol of strength, and luck is also a part of strength. Being able to get someone to help you also represents a person's strength. After all, this person has at least convinced the person who wants to help him. This is his ability. The unfettered sword martial god said. This meant that the unfettered sword martial god had already agreed to help Lin Ling. After all, Lin Ling's martial path was the same as the unfettered sword martial god's martial path. Being able to get the unfettered sword martial god to help him was also Lin Ling's ability and strength. However, I have a principle. That is, the other party has to ask me for help. However, the words that came out of the sword martial god peak stunned everyone. The unfettered sword martial god was also looking at Lin Ling. This caused everyone to look at Lin Ling as well. This included the Yuan venerate martial god. After all, if Lin Ling asked the unfettered sword martial god for help, the unfettered sword martial god would also help him. Lin Ling also looked at the smiling unfettered sword martial god in the sky and suddenly said, "Senior unfettered sword, have you ever asked anyone for help in your life?" "No, this is different from my martial path. I would rather die than ask anyone for help." The unfettered sword martial god was stunned for a moment before he replied, "In that case I will do the same." Lin Ling immediately enunciated each word clearly. His words were earth-shattering, causing everyone's faces to turn red. Lin Ling actually didn't ask the unfettered sword martial god for help? For the sake of his so-called backbone? Not asking anyone for help in his entire life? At that instant, the crowd could not help but admire Lin Ling, as expected of a fearless and courageous man. That being said, those who were hostile toward Lin Ling could not help but burst out laughing. Lin Ling was too stupid. How could there be such a stupid person? Meanwhile, the unfettered sword martial god stared at Lin Ling in disbelief. He did not expect Lin Ling to reject his request. "You can treat me as stupid or stubborn. However, you have your own principles, and I have mine too." As if he was aware of the unfettered sword martial god's confusion, Lin Ling spoke in a calm tone. "Such an interesting little brat." The unfettered sword martial god burst out laughing after hearing the words. His laughter was filled with admiration, but he did not plan to interfere. As a swordsman, he understood Lin Ling's thoughts. If he were to interfere, it would mean that Lin Ling was begging him. Therefore, he could not afford to humiliate Lin Ling. In other words, he would not help Lin Ling. "I'll catch him." In Plentiful City, many people immediately became excited. Wanyan Xueqi even shouted loudly. Rolling corpse aura surged toward Lin Ling. "Everyone, prepare for the battle." Lin Ling raised the sword in his hand. His eyes were filled with madness. The strong were afraid of the unreasonable were afraid of the reckless, and the reckless were afraid of the crazy. The current Lin Ling was a madman. If he dared to kill, he would dare to risk his life. In Plentiful City, the interrupted battle was about to erupt again. The legend of immortality was about to be broken. "Sorry to disturb you. I'm here to look for someone." However, at that moment, another change occurred. It could be said that there was a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. It was like a basin of cold water that poured down on the hot-blooded people. A woman in plain clothes tore open the void and slowly walked out. She appeared in front of Lin Ling. "Are you looking for death? I'm looking for your whole family. Die." At that moment, Wanyan Xueqi's terrifying corpse aura surged. He had been holding back for a long time. Now, Lin Ling was right in front of him. Suddenly, a person ran out and said that she was looking for someone. "Looking for your sister." However, compared to the anger of the people, the two top martial gods in the sky frowned. Apparently, they felt that something was wrong. "You're Lin Ling, right? I want to ask you for someone." "Yes." The person did not care about the anger of the crowd. Instead, she looked at Lin Ling with a smile. She did not even look behind her and clapped her hands. Rumble. Chapter 38:59. What a mysterious woman. As for Wanyan Xueqi, he was crushed to the ground. Even his million-year-old corpse almost collapsed. "This!" Exclamation point. Everyone was dumbfounded. Even Lin Ling furrowed his brows. This plain-clothed lady was so powerful. But why is she here? Why is she helping me? "I'm here for her!" Exclamation point. At this moment, the woman seemed to know that Lin Ling was confused. She smiled and pointed at the golden white evil spirit. "Him!" Exclamation point. Lin Ling was even more suspicious. "No, it's the girl behind him. In fact, we've been looking for her for a long time." The woman smiled. Lin Ling's pupils constricted. "Xiao Luan?" Behind the golden white evil spirit, Xiao Luan's body trembled. Her eyes were filled with panic. "Don't be afraid. I don't mean any harm." The woman saw Xiao Luan's expression and immediately waved her hand. She was dressed in plain clothes and had a harmless smile. From any angle, This woman looked very ordinary. She was just like an ordinary village woman. This caused everyone to be stunned. However, at this moment the ground exploded. Xueqi, who was previously suppressed, jumped up again. The rotten flesh on his body continued to fall as he pounced towards the woman. "Who are you to his mother?" Xueqi was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. He had finally found Lin Ling's weakness and no one could help him. In the end, this woman came to cause trouble. However, the woman was still smiling as she spoke to Lin Ling. She stretched out her right hand and mercury poured out from her palm. It was like a silver shadow flowing along the ground. Next, it bound Xueqi's legs. Boom, boom, boom. Under countless shocked gazes, Xueqi was like a sandbag. He was smashed back and forth by the mercury. "What's her name?" What was terrifying was that the woman acted as if nothing had happened. She smiled and asked Lin Ling. Lin Ling's heart roared. This woman's strength was too terrifying. Even he could not see through her strength. However, he guessed that this woman had a treasure that could hide her aura. Judging from its grade, it was definitely not low. "Her name is Xiao Luan," Lin Ling quickly said. "Xiao Luan, can you follow me?" "Don't worry, I won't hurt you." The woman immediately squatted down and placed her hands on her knees. She bent her waist and smiled at Xiao Luan. Bang! Bang! However, behind her, Xueqi was still being smashed. He simply had no way to retaliate. This allowed everyone to instantly realize that this seemingly harmless woman was actually an extremely terrifying existence. In the sky, the two top martial gods narrowed their eyes and did not say anything. This. Xiao Luan could not help but look at Lin Ling. However, Lin Ling shook her head and smiled. "I'm sorry. Because of her childhood habits, she's a little afraid of strangers, so she won't go with you." What a joke. If Xiao Luan was willing to stay, Lin Ling would have left her at the mountain stronghold. Why would she follow Lin Ling to the ends of the world? Lin Ling, on the other hand, had clearly refused. Everyone was once again shocked by Lin Ling's lawlessness because everyone could tell that the woman's background was not to be underestimated. "I see." However, the woman was not aggressive. Instead, she looked embarrassed. She looked at Lin Ling enviously. It was as if she was jealous of Xiao Luan listening to Lin Ling. "Big sister, if I go with you, can you promise me 2 things? At this time, Xiao Luan suddenly said. The woman immediately smiled and nodded. She suddenly became happy and said, "Speak, I can promise you anything." It was obvious that although the woman was powerful, she was very polite to Xiao Luan. Lin Ling frowned. He was still wondering why the woman was looking for Lin Ling. However, he suddenly remembered what the headhunters had told him. Someone was looking for Xiao Luan. At that time, he thought it was just a rumor. Now, it seemed that someone was looking for Xiao Luan. However, Xiao Luan had no strength. Why was the mysterious woman looking for her? Suddenly, Lin Ling seemed to have thought of something. It was the world's will. Xiao Luan had the world's will. Could it be because of this? "Xiao Luan, you can't." Lin Ling immediately refused. However, Xiao Luan smiled and looked at Lin Ling. Her eyes were filled with excitement. "My lord, you are the person who has treated me the best in my life. You are also the first person who gave me a name. Xiao Luan also wants to do something for my lord. Let Xiao Luan help you, okay?" As she spoke, Xiao Luan's eyes became moist. Previously, she had watched as Lin Ling was surrounded and attacked by wave after wave of powerhouses. She had been worried to death. At that moment, she had wanted nothing more than to rush in front of Lin Ling and block those ferocious attacks for Lin Ling. However, she knew that with her weak body, she would not be of much help. Now, she had a chance to help Lin Ling. How could she miss this opportunity? "Don't worry, Lin Ling. I promise you that I will not hurt her. If anyone wants to attack her, they will have to do it over my dead body." At this moment, the woman seemed to understand Lin Ling's worries. She could not help but feel touched. However, she still spoke to Lin Ling seriously. These words came from the bottom of her heart. Lin Ling could feel the sincerity of the woman. "Sister, if you take the Lord away from here, I will agree to go with you." At this moment, Xiao Luan also made a condition. "No problem." The woman smiled and nodded. "No." At this moment, the people in the distance were so angry that their lungs were about to explode. So many of their people had died and they had come here to kill Lin Ling. Were they going to fail again? In their dreams. However, the woman did not even look at them. She stomped her foot and silver mercury flowed out, instantly binding those who had spoken. Then they were smashed to the ground like sandbags. This scene was extremely shocking. From afar, the ground looked like a mercury tree. Countless silver vines grew out and bound people before smashing them to the ground. However, no one could resist it. Not even the martial god realm powerhouses. Mercury? What a powerful talent. She has probably reached the pinnacle of the ultimate desolate body. Lin Ling's heart thumped. Even if Li Xiaoyao was present, he had never seen such a mysterious technique. Even if Li Xiaoyao was here, he would probably not be the woman's match. Lin Ling could not help but sigh. As he became stronger, he also entered the god's era. He had seen the strength of experts from all sides. He could only say that the ultimate world was filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. In the past, Li Xiaoyao was known as a genius in the 9 prefectures. However, he was only a tyrant in the 9 prefectures. His palm could not reach the ultimate world. Lin Ling, no one is against it. Come with me. As for the woman, she smiled at Lin Ling. These words made the onlookers behind them speechless. No one objected? Those who objected were probably smashed to death by you. All right. Lin Ling immediately nodded. He looked at the 3 major races and asked them to leave first. The 3 major races immediately nodded. They knew that it was useless for them to stay. Chapter 3860. Heavenly Voice of the Gods. When the word kill was uttered, it carried with it a sense of decisiveness. That slender body actually carried with it a boundless domineering aura. What? Seeing Xiaoluan's finger, everyone started to panic. Xiaoluan, you can't kill the members of the Golden God tribe and the Water God tribe. That's because it's against the heavens. As for the others, it's not good to kill too many of them. Moreover, they're your lord's enemies. I don't think he wants to take revenge through the hands of others. However, the woman clearly had some misgivings. Thus, she looked at Xiaoluan warmly and said, he can be killed. All right. Xiaoluan finally nodded. Whoosh. Seeing Xiaoluan nod, the smile on the woman's face also disappeared. In its place, there was a hint of solemnity and coldness. She was like an iceberg that had been frozen for millions of years, causing everyone to feel a chill run down their spines. As for Wanyan Shiji, his entire body was enveloped by mercury. It was as if his strength had been corroded. This also allowed him to know that the woman was extremely talented. Moreover, her cultivation level was also at the martial god realm. After all, only a heaven-defying power could freeze a million-year-old corpse like him. The mercury continued to spread upward and enveloped Wanyan Shiji. This also caused a gigantic mercury statue to appear on the street. At this moment, Wanyan Shiji's face was ashen. His eyes were filled with resentment as he glared at Lin Ling. Today, he had failed to kill Lin Ling again. He couldn't understand why this had happened. He couldn't accept this. He couldn't accept this. Every time, he had almost killed Lin Ling. However, Lin Ling still managed to escape from his hands. In the end, he had even died because of Lin Ling. Wanyan Shiji. At this moment, Lin Ling also spoke calmly. I know you can't accept this. However, in this world the winner takes all. You should know this principle. I know very well. Wanyan Shiji seemed to know that he was definitely going to die. He sighed and said, Lin Ling, when I found out that my son and the heaven-crushing alliance were killed by you, I hated you. I wanted to cut you into pieces, and I even wanted to poison you. Hearing this, Lin Ling could not help but interject. At that time, you'd already have half a foot in the netherworld. That's right. If I had a choice, I wouldn't choose to kill you now. I overestimated myself. A hint of regret finally appeared in Wanyan Shiji's eyes. Because if he had killed Lin Ling a little later, he would have had a lot of opportunities. However, he was blinded by the hatred of his son's death, which led to the current situation. If you had killed me a little later, perhaps you wouldn't have wanted to kill me. However, Lin Ling shook his head and said, because at that time, you'll realize that you won't be able to kill me. If you really want to kill me, it'll be your death. As for your son and your heaven-crushing alliance, I can see that you're a man, so I'll be frank with you. If they don't kill me or provoke me, I might not necessarily lay a finger on them. Sigh. My son Bupo, he made a wrong move in chess. Xueqi sighed deeply. He knew that if his son had not killed Lin Ling, it was very likely that Lin Ling would have walked away from the demonic essence forest and ignored the heaven-crushing alliance. However, there were no ifs in this world. If everything could be predicted, then this would not be life anymore. The mercury finally submerged Xueqi's head. He had also transformed into a gigantic mercury statue. Although he was a corpse king, he also possessed a hint of vicissitude and domineering aura. Meanwhile, Lin Ling looked at him calmly. However, he suddenly sighed softly in his mind. Xueqi was an elite who had cultivated for countless years. However, in the end he had died here. The affairs of the world were truly unpredictable. And this was the life of a cultivator. At the same time, the expressions of the surrounding people were also grave. The most powerful big shot who wanted to kill Lin Ling had died just like that. This made them feel a sense of sympathy for him. They involuntarily looked toward Lin Ling, and their expressions became even more grave. Even now, no one had been able to break the legend of immortality. Let's go. At that moment, the woman walked over to Xiaoluan and held his hand. Xiaoluan resisted at first, but the woman was very sincere, so Xiaoluan did not resist as much. After holding Xiaoluan's hand, the woman looked at Lin Ling with a smile. Lin Ling immediately nodded and recalled all the dragon demons. Then, he followed the woman into the sky. Xiaoluan, we have been looking for you for a long time. In mid-air, the woman and Xiaoluan were chatting non-stop. It was as if they were shopping. This also made the people on the ground speechless. Speaking of which, how long was that mysterious woman going to ignore them? Your Excellency. However, at that moment, a calm voice suddenly drifted over from the huge continent. There was actually a hint of anger in this voice. The person who had spoken was obviously a Yuan venerate martial god. He was naturally the last person to stop Lin Ling from leaving. Xiaoluan, what do you like to eat? However, what made everyone speechless was that the woman in plain clothes had also ignored the Yuan venerate martial god. Speaking of which, who in the entire Jojo would be so bold as to ignore a martial god? Only this woman would dare do that. Your Excellency. The Yuan venerate martial god could not help but shout again. If he had not seen the mysterious origin of this woman, he would have already made a move. So noisy. Are you a mute just because you don't speak? At that moment, the woman was finally annoyed. She pointed at the Yuan venerate martial god and scolded him. The Yuan venerate martial god immediately gritted his teeth, his face turning red with anger. I don't know who you are, but I will take them away today. If you are not afraid of death, go ahead and try. The woman spoke again. However, her tone and attitude were like that of a village woman. She was very ordinary, so ordinary that it felt unreal. However, these words made the Yuan venerate martial god not dare speak again. After all, his martial path was to consolidate at every step. He did not dare act rashly in a situation where he could not see through everything. Just like that, the woman led Lin Ling away. The sight of her departing back undoubtedly infuriated everyone. However, at that moment, a token floated out of the sky. The token was about the size of a palm and a pleasant voice drifted out, making the two-peak martial god squint. Following that, the token also disappeared. The eyes of the two-peak martial gods trembled. Their faces were filled with disbelief. They knew that this was the token of the divine voice. They finally knew the identity of that woman. It was the divine voice. This was an identity that was above the sacred knights of the gods. Moreover, these divine heavenly voices were usually directed at only one person, and that person was a god. Most importantly, heavenly voice of God had another identity. She was a trial of God. Could it be him? The Yuan venerate martial god's face turned pale. He no longer looked as dignified as before. As for the unrestrained sword martial god, he burst out laughing all of a sudden. Interesting, interesting, I've always thought that luck is a part of one's strength. That kid didn't use his luck on me, but it's still with him. This laughter spread across the entire prairie, making everyone even more confused. However, they all had a feeling that the woman's background was definitely not simple based on the shocked expressions of the two martial gods. Chapter 3861. An ordinary little forest. At this moment, Lin Ling followed the woman and walked forward. His heart was also very confused. However, a void tunnel appeared in front of them. The woman smiled at Lin Ling and led Lin Ling into the void tunnel. On the other hand, Lin Ling relaxed because he knew that if this woman really wanted to harm him, then he wouldn't be able to stop her. After passing through the void passage, a small forest appeared in front of him. Green smoke floated up from the forest, and there seemed to be a few small wooden houses. However, they looked extremely ordinary, and Lin Ling couldn't sense any spiritual energy. He felt as if he had arrived at a small village in the mortal world. Sawa, you're back. Moreover, there were people walking past the small forest from time to time, greeting them with a smile. These people carried firewood on their backs and were dressed like woodcutters. Their temperament was similar to the woman's, and they were very ordinary. So her name is Xueqi, this name. Lin Ling was a little speechless. This plain-clothed woman looked ordinary, and even her name was ordinary. Follow me. While Lin Ling was still in shock, the woman led Lin Ling through the small forest and arrived in front of the small wooden house. This small wooden house was also very ordinary. It was surrounded by sparse branches that formed a small fence. Inside, there were chickens and a big yellow dog. An old woman was hugging corn. She kept pinching it off and then throwing it on the ground. The chickens immediately clucked and excitedly ate the corn seeds on the ground. On the other side, a woodcutter was cooking. At the main entrance of the small courtyard, an old man was smoking a pipe. He was sitting on a chair with his legs crossed, smoking calmly. In the eyes of others, it was just a very ordinary courtyard. The corners of Lin Ling's eyes twitched. Even though he had traveled extensively over the years, this was the first time he had seen such a miraculous scene. Most importantly, whether it was his soul power or his 10,000 mammoth magic eyes, these people were mortals. Of course, if it wasn't for the scene with Xueqi, he would definitely think that they were very ordinary people. Coming. At this time, the old man also saw Lin Ling and the others. He immediately sat up straight and tapped his opium pipe on the soles of his shoes, looking somewhat excited. He smiled, revealing a few sparse yellow front teeth. However, he looked at Xiao Luan with excitement. Old woman, hurry up and pour me some water. Erdan, there are guests coming tonight. Kill that Luhua chicken and add more dishes tonight. Next, the old man chuckled. Damn old man, I think you're just greedy. You want to eat spicy Luhua chicken. The auntie came over with a few bowls of water and handed one to Lin Ling and Xiao Luan. Xueqi was very obedient. She picked up the corn and went to feed the chicken. Lin Ling was speechless. He was even more confused now. Come, little girl, let Grandpa have a look. The old man kept staring at Xiao Luan with a smile on his face. But to Lin Ling, the old man looked a little wretched. Grandpa, may I know who you are? However, Lin Ling saw that Xiao Luan was afraid, so he spoke up for Xiao Luan. However, when the old man saw Lin Ling, his attitude changed and his face darkened. This made Lin Ling speechless, but he was too lazy to care about his attitude. Old man, look at yourself. I think you're just jealous of old Lei. At this time, the auntie laughed and scolded him. Then she looked at Lin Ling and said, Little boy, he's called Old Black. We all call him Old Black. Little boy? Lin Ling was speechless. But seeing that Lin Ling was still confused, the auntie continued, but outside, people call him Kurishin. This sentence seemed to be said casually, but to Lin Ling, it was like a bolt from the blue. Kurishin. One of the 4 gods. All the mysteries in Lin Ling's mind were solved in an instant. No wonder the Yuan venerates and martial gods hadn't dared say anything. It turned out that Xueqi was from the Kurishin. She was also a powerhouse who could directly meet the Kurishin. This also meant that Lin Ling had been able to survive all those powerhouses because of Xiao Luan. He had never imagined that he would end up like this after helping this girl out of pity for Xiao Luan. It seemed like the queen had been right. Although Lin Ling had killed many people, he had also helped many more people. Xueqi is a trial taker of the divine trial and has the divine voice. Speaking of which, Xiao Lin, you are also a trial taker of the divine trial and one of old Lei's men. We all know this. However, you probably didn't know that out of the 10 divine trial, only those who complete 7 missions can obtain the divine voice. However, you haven't even completed 5 of the divine trial, so it's no wonder that you can't meet Old Lei. Old Lei is full of praise for you though. The auntie was easy to talk to, but her words were like thunder that rumbled in Lin Ling's mind. He had never imagined that he would actually meet a god directly. However, you are also worthy of being one of Old Lei's men. You have done well, because you are the first person to meet Old Black without any fear. You have to know that this damned old man treats his own people well but is very fierce to outsiders. He is especially strict with Old Lei's men. The auntie said with a smile before she went to slaughter the chicken. The people in the courtyard were all busy. Only Kirishin was left smoking, while Lin Ling and Xiao Luan stood there in a daze. After standing there for a while, Lin Ling's stubbornness flared up. This old man looked down on him so much, so why should he give him any face? After all, he was one of Lei Gong's men. Therefore, he took a few steps forward and pulled out 2 chairs for Xiao Luan to sit down. Then he sat down calmly. At this moment, Xueqi and the rest who were working in the distance secretly laughed. Kirishin seemed to be smoking, but his slightly closed eyes clearly twitched. This Old Lei's men were really arrogant. Their stubbornness was exactly the same as Old Lei's. Stop pretending to be asleep. Tell me, what do you want Xiao Luan to do? Lin Ling spoke up at this moment. However, Kirishin did not pay attention to him. Instead, he continued smoking with an arrogant look on his face. Lin Ling chuckled in his heart. He'd thought that gods were dignified and divine, but it turned out that they were just old geezers. However, this also showed how formidable gods were because they possessed the laws of the Grand Tao that returned to its original simplicity. Don't think that I don't know that Xiao Luan has a world will on him. Gods like you are most afraid of this power and can't wait to destroy it. Therefore, if you want to harm Xiao Luan, don't blame me for being impolite. Perhaps I am not your opponent, but if you want to harm Xiao Luan, I, Lin Ling, will definitely draw my sword and meet you. Lin Ling said again, but this time, his voice was cold. With his personality, Xiao Luan was already his family and friend. Therefore, no matter who the other party was, as long as they dared to harm his family and friends, he was not afraid of gods. Protecting those close to him was also one of Lin Ling's personalities. This time, after Lin Ling's words floated out, the Kirishin finally slowly opened his eyes. In those eyes, a terrifying ancient power began to spread out. Chapter 3862. Darkness Invasion. Endless darkness suddenly came like a tide. Heaven and earth were drowned in darkness, and it was lonely. In Lin Ling's ears, an emotionless voice floated over. You don't have to know what you shouldn't know. If you know too much, you might be a dead man. Horrifying. Lin Ling felt that he was cut off from everything. It was like he was sealed. He couldn't even sense the giant ghost that had been drifting around him. She is my family, and I brought her out. Her life and death are related to me. I have to know. Yes. But being drowned in the endless darkness, Lin Ling also shouted coldly. But he realized that the ground seemed to have cracked open, and a dark abyss appeared. The endless darkness was like tentacles that drowned him and pulled him into the abyss. Lin Ling could clearly see his arms and legs. The endless darkness was like a tide that drowned him. It gradually reached his chest and cheeks. Finally, it drowned his eyes. Obviously, because Lin Ling knew some secrets, the Kirishin wanted to harm him. Unless Lin Ling gave up on prying into the secrets of the gods. But was that possible? In the Heaven Mystic's kingdom, in the sacred rainforest, Lin Ling had protected all his family and friends. He had never taken a step back. Now, Lin Ling treated Xiao Luan as his family and friend. How could he give up? If he gave up, it would not be in line with Lin Ling's principles. Lin Ling's heart was screaming and resisting. The world-swallowing beast's talent was also crazily swallowing the darkness. Compared to the evil ghost jellyfish, the world-swallowing beast swallowed the darkness faster. Of course, compared to the endless darkness around him, the world-swallowing beast's swallowing power was still very weak. It did not have much effect. This made Lin Ling feel that he might die here. The gods came from the era of the gods. They had seen countless deaths. To the gods, Lin Ling was just an ant. Even Li Xiaoyao was a junior in front of the gods. If he didn't want to die, all he had to do was take a step back and compromise with the gods. But Lin Ling did not compromise. If he did not know what God wanted to do with Xiao Luan, he would not hand him over. Now that he was on the brink of death, the will to live in his heart was frantically fighting against it. A calamity of life and death? Lin Ling didn't know how many times he had experienced this in his life. Every time he faced it, he felt as if he was carrying a mountain of 1,000 catties on his back. It made him tired and made him want to give up completely. However, Lin Ling gritted his teeth and withstood it every time. He didn't know if he could survive this life or death calamity, but he knew that he couldn't die here, because he had too many unfinished business. 3 years later, that fateful battle would take place. Yu Yu, Shen Yuan Go and the others. Grandfather, mother, and the others. There were too many. Because Lin Ling had too many ties in his heart, he didn't want to give up on anyone. Thus, he wouldn't give up on little Luan either, and he would continue to fight. Rumble! At that moment, in the endless darkness, a candlelight flashed. The Buddha dragon's Sanskrit spread out, and the candlelight grew brighter and brighter. It kept blooming in Lin Ling's body like a flower. The light even made Lin Ling unable to look at himself. The light seemed to come from the universe. No, it was the calamity-destroying Sun Bao. When all the darkness met the light, it melted like snow. When all the darkness was expelled, Lin Ling finally opened his eyes. He found that he was still sitting on the chair, and beside him was little Luan. The old man was still sitting with his legs crossed, smoking calmly. It was as if everything that had happened before was a dream. But Lin Ling knew that it was not a dream. The gods' methods were indeed terrifying. Without anyone knowing, they had let him walk around in the hands of the king of hell. But then, Lin Ling's pupils shrank. He felt that his realm-swallowing beast talent had broken through and reached the 5th grade. It had also given birth to the ears of chaos. This was because the realm-swallowing beast's ultimate goal was chaos, one of the 4 ferocious beasts of the universe. So, in the process of continuous growth it was evolving toward chaos. And now, Lin Ling had awakened the eyes of chaos and the ears of chaos. The Eye of Chaos was a skill that could affect a martial artist's heart of martial arts. However, Lin Ling rarely spent time researching this skill. Just like what Wanyan Bupo had said before, Lin Ling had many talents, but he had never been able to unleash their true power. The reason for this was that Lin Ling had too many talents. He did not have the time to study just one talent. Now, the ears of chaos could hear everything in the universe. Its power was stronger than the 6 ears of heaven. Here, Lin Ling could even hear the sound of 10,000 worlds. Unfortunately, Lin Ling's soul power was strong and could cover his surroundings. Sometimes it was more convenient than the ears of chaos. So what made Lin Ling happy was that the realm-swallowing beast talent had increased by 1 grade. This had undoubtedly increased his strength again. Not only that, Lin Ling also discovered that his cultivation had improved by 2 levels in a row, reaching the 6th layer martial progenitor realm, the peak of the mid-stage martial progenitor realm. Moreover, this breakthrough did not consume any treasures, which surprised Lin Ling. Of course, although he had broken through, the other 5 Dantians had not broken through. Only the first Dantian had broken through. But overall, Lin Ling had taken advantage of this time. He couldn't help but look at the calm black god. That old man was blowing out smoke rings. He really looked like a big boss. Lin Ling was not an ungrateful person. Although he was not happy with the old man's arrogance, he would still be polite on the surface. "Thank you, senior," Lin Ling said calmly. "Humph." The old man snorted coldly, which made Xueqi and the others laugh secretly. Only they knew that the Curishan rarely helped outsiders, especially Lei Gong's people. Not to mention helping them, the Curishan would pull a long face. It was the first time that the Curishan had helped Lin Ling improve his strength. "Senior, if I had not persevered, I would have died." However, Lin Ling sneered. "That's right. If you had given up halfway, you would have died. Some secrets should not be known by too many people," the old man said indifferently. Previously, if Lin Ling had not stubbornly persisted and resisted, the darkness would have completely engulfed him. Fortunately, Lin Ling had never given up resisting and had never thought of compromising. This also showed that Lin Ling was not using Xiao Luan, but treating Xiao Luan as a true friend. Based on this, the Curishan would not kill Lin Ling. What a black-hearted old man. Hearing this, Lin Ling could not help but curse. Of course, although he was cursing, he still had a feeling that the Curishan would not kill him at the most critical moment. After all, He was Lei Gong's man. Little brat. Who are you cursing? Be rude. Chapter 3863. World will host. He didn't look like a god at all. He looked more like an old man. Haha, stop putting on airs. Tell me, what do you want to do to little Lewin? However, Lin Ling became unperturbed again. He sat back down, crossed his legs, and said calmly, "Don't worry." Old Man He narrowed his eyes. Although he was angry on the surface, his heart was full of admiration. In the 9 prefectures, other than the gods, only this mortal dared to be so unafraid of him. However, this fearlessness wasn't an act. He knew that some people wanted to attract his attention and purposely pretended to be fearless. However, he could see through such people with a single glance. Lin Ling wasn't acting. He felt that if he really did harm to little Lewin, this kid would really fight with his life on the line. I know that you were Li Xiaoyao in your past life. You have a great enmity with Lu Li. However, let me tell you, no matter if it's you or Li Xiaoyao, in front of me, you're just a kid who's still wet behind the ears. At best, you can only be considered as good seedlings. The Curishan's words undoubtedly surprised Lin Ling. However, after thinking about it, he felt that it was normal. It wasn't difficult for someone from the era of gods to see through his past life. After all, even if Li Xiaoyao was here, he would still have to call this old man senior. Of course, you're also very strange. You can't see through Li Xiaoyao's past life. No wonder, no wonder. Old Man He smiled meaningfully. His words caused Xueqi and the others who were working not far away to have a flash in their eyes. Because they knew that when a Curishan said these words, it meant that the Curishan really couldn't see through him. In the 9 prefectures, there were very few people that the Curishan couldn't see through. They couldn't help but secretly mutter. It was said that those who could become trial takers of the divine trials were all extraordinary. Could it be that Lin Ling's past life was also an existence with a great background? This sword, this evil spirit, and that treasure god Nan Wu Fengyu. Even God Emperor Zhang Gang and that guy who gave up his god seat. No wonder they all know you. Old Man He continued, however, this is also an unimportant matter. However, Lin Ling felt that this was not irrelevant. He knew that the sword Old Man He was talking about was the tyrannical song sword. As for the evil ghost, it was the giant ghost. Then there was Nan Wu Fengyu treasure god and the steel slayer god emperor. These were all existences from the era of the gods, but they all appeared in Lin Ling's world. As for the guy who gave up his divine throne, Lin Ling was confused. Of course, he also instantly thought of the person who had introduced him to the martial god realm. The mysterious blue-robed young man who took Venerable Si Kongming as his disciple. These mysteries made Lin Ling feel that the world ahead was filled with clouds and mist. However, he did not think too much about it and asked, "What do you plan to do with Xiao Luan?" "Take her as a disciple." Old Man He looked at Lin Ling seriously. "I don't lie. I will not harm her. Instead, I plan to take her as a disciple and teach her the great Tao. Moreover, let me tell you this. She is one of the world wills. In the future, the god of the world wills will very likely use her body to resurrect. Therefore, such an existence must be killed. However, there is another way, and that is to train her so that she has a strong consciousness and can resist the god of the world wills. This is also fate. In the entire universe, and even in the realm of the gods, there are only a few such hosts." Hearing this, Lin Ling's expression turned serious. Although he did not know what the world wills were, he knew that it was an extremely terrifying existence. To be honest, the world wills represented the entire universe. It was also a powerful law, and its existence was to protect the entire void of the universe. However, human martial artists were greedy and shameless. They killed mercilessly, causing the world wills to want to destroy the world. The entire void of the universe wanted to get rid of the parasites in its body. As for the 4 gods, including all the trial of gods, they only had one goal and mission, and that was to stop the world wills. This was Lin Ling's understanding of the world wills. "Can you guarantee that you won't hurt her?" Lin Ling asked. "I can. She will also become the 3rd disciple in my life." Old Man He looked at Lin Ling indifferently as he said this. Generally speaking, with his status, he would not bother to explain such things. However, he could sense that Lin Ling was protecting Xiaoluan. That kind of protection came from the bottom of his heart, And he was not even afraid of death. Therefore, he explained all of this. It was as if Lin Ling was Xiaoluan's brother, and if he wanted to take Xiaoluan away, then he had to get Lin Ling's permission. Xiaoluan, what do you think? Lin Ling also knew that if Qirashen could say all this, then his promise was most likely true. However, he still looked at Xiaoluan and said this. Xiaoluan looked at Lin Ling, then looked at Qirashen. Her big eyes kept flashing, and she suddenly asked, if I follow you, can I become stronger? Ha ha ha. Qirashen laughed and said kindly, yes, you can become stronger than all of them here. Xiaoluan's eyes suddenly flashed, and she asked, I have been a jink since I was young. Grandpa, aren't you afraid that I will implicate you? Ha ha ha. Qirashen could not help but laugh louder. He said word by word, if you become my disciple, you will be my granddaughter. If there is any disaster, Grandpa will bear it. When he said the last sentence, he did not sound like a high and mighty god, but more like a kind grandpa. Thank you, Grandpa. Xiaoluan's eyes suddenly moistened. Xiaoluan, quickly greet your master. Lin Ling immediately felt happy for Xiaoluan. He could also sense that this Qirashen was very fierce to outsiders, but very kind to his own people. If Xiaoluan became his disciple, it would be a good ending. Old woman, you have a strange granddaughter today. Is the food ready yet? Coming. Then, the few of them began to eat in the small courtyard, looking very happy. Lin Ling also realized that other than the old woman, the only people who could eat together with the Qirashen were Xueqi, the woodcutter, and a simple and honest man. These three people were obviously trial of gods, and their identities were at the level of God's voice. Xiaoluan, every god only has 10 trial of gods. You are Lei Gong's subordinate, and one of the last trial of gods to become a trial of gods. You have to work hard. The old woman was very courteous. As she spoke, she picked up some food for Lin Ling. Lin Ling immediately thanked her. Then he remembered that he was still in the middle of his second mission. If he wanted to complete 5 missions and meet Lei Gong, it would not be easy. As for Sister Xuehua and the others, completing 7 missions must have taken a lot of time. Thinking of this, Lin Ling felt a little strange. He had never thought that he would meet a Qirashen for the first time, even though he had never met Lei Gong. However, he quickly asked, Senior Qirashen, do you know about the dragon race? Dragon race. Chapter 3864. 3 months of fishing. After a short conversation, the Qirashen was no longer as fierce towards Lin Ling. Of course, he knew that this kid was amenable to coaxing but not coercion. Hence, he was too lazy to put on airs. Hee hee. Lin Ling smiled and took out the wine he brought. He respectfully poured a cup for the Qirashen and said, Senior Qirashen, I don't have any treasures to show my filial piety to you. I only have a pot of coarse wine. Although my wine can't be compared to the wine here, it's strong enough. Senior Qirashen, it's not bad to change your taste occasionally. He was such a person. Even if others didn't look down on him, he would still treat them as someone important. You little brat. The Qirashen laughed and scolded him. However, when he smelled the wine, he was immediately tempted. Although he had drunk a lot of alcohol in his life, and it wasn't like he had never drunk Lin Ling's wine before, he had been living here most of the time, and the wine he brewed was mainly light and mellow. He rarely drank hard liquor. Just like what Lin Ling said, it's not bad to change your taste occasionally. Then, he narrowed his eyes and tasted the strong wine. He was extremely satisfied. At the same time, he was jealous because most of his trial takers were well behaved. None of them were as cunning and manipulative as Lin Ling. However, Lin Ling was old Lei's man. He was so envious. If he had found Lin Ling earlier, then Lin Ling would have been his man. The dragon tribe is a bunch of stubborn old men. If you follow the ancient dragon wasteland, then you can cross the Kaiyuan River and find them. The Qirashen said calmly. Well, which way should I go? Lin Ling asked curiously. Hee, I can't say. Moreover, old Lei will definitely scold me. Anyway, if your luck is not bad, you can also meet them in the ancient dragon wasteland. If your luck is bad, then you can only keep walking. Delivering letters is such a tough job. Hearing this, Lin Ling shook his head helplessly. Ha ha ha. Qirashen laughed out loud. He seemed to be in a good mood when he saw Lin Ling's depressed face. It's not impossible to tell you the direction. Don't you have old Lay's guide? Just follow it. However, even if you want to see the dragons, sometimes they may not want to see you. After laughing, the Curushin said again, Senior, please enlighten me. Lin Ling hurriedly asked as many questions as he could. I can tell you, but you have to promise me one thing. No problem. Senior, go ahead. Release your dragon chi. When the time comes, the dragon clan will meet you. After the conversation, Lin Ling roughly understood the situation. Next, he would ask the Curushin to let him enter the ancient dragon wasteland. After all, this place had been sealed off, and those without a quota couldn't enter at all. The Curushin did not care about this at all and nodded immediately. Lin Ling was curious and asked what the shops in the ancient dragon wasteland had and how to buy treasures. After all, Lin Ling was only short of a fruit. If he could buy the fruit of fortune, Lin Ling's path of fire would have another powerful technique. Unfortunately, the Curushin smiled mysteriously, which made Lin Ling speechless. Next, Lin Ling kept trying to please the old man, but the old man was tight-lipped and refused to give him a single cent. In the end, Lin Ling had to give up. This meal was very enjoyable. Lin Ling was relieved to leave Xiaoluan to the Curushin and was about to leave. However, at this time, the Curushin said lightly, You said before that you have to promise me one thing. Now, I'll tell you this. I'll fish here for 3 months. What? Fish? Lin Ling was tongue-tied and couldn't believe it. One had to know that the 3 years agreement was getting closer and closer. Therefore, Lin Ling had to find an Yuer immediately and complete the task of delivering the letter. How could he have time to fish here? Taking a step back, if he cultivated here, Lin Ling would still be interested in fishing. Senior Curushin, can you change this? I'm a person who likes to fry fish. If it's fishing, I really can't do it. Lin Ling begged. He had agreed too quickly. If he knew that it was fishing, he wouldn't have agreed even if he was beaten to death. What? You want to go back on your words? The Curushin narrowed his eyes. Lin Ling could only nod helplessly. He only hoped that an Yuer would not leave the ancient dragon wasteland in these 3 months. Next, Lin Ling lived in the small forest. He went out at sunrise and went to rest at sunset. As for the day, he would occasionally feed the chickens with Sister Xueqi and chop firewood with the woodcutter. Although it was boring, he still enjoyed it. Especially fishing. He fished in a small pond beside the small forest. The fish there were fresh and fat. At first, Lin Ling fished for a day, but he didn't catch a single fish. However, as the days passed, his heart calmed down. Slowly, he caught more and more fish. The Curushin praised him because he had delicious fish soup to drink every day. Lin Ling also realized that those fat fish were also extraordinary. After eating them every day, his physical strength also slowly increased. Gradually, it reached 13,000 worlds power. His speed also reached 1,300 worlds speed. It increased by 3,000 worlds power. If he fused with his talent, he could reach 18,000 worlds power, close to 20,000 worlds power. It had to be said that sometimes, cultivation was not always about seclusion. Ordinary days like these could also bring about good results. And Lin Ling had a deep understanding of this. Because in these years, he was decisive in killing and his personality was also magnanimous. His heart was still a little impetuous. However, under the peaceful fishing, his heart also calmed down. Especially the resistance to killing intent and demonic chi, it was undoubtedly stronger. Haha, little Lin, this kid, seems unruly but he also values principles. He said he was fishing and he really did it for 3 months. When Lin Ling went fishing in the courtyard, the ant said while feeding the chickens, This kid is not simple. The Curushin smoked, crossed his legs and said, The evil spirit beside me is a god, but he has lost his memory. If the 8 gods return, I'm afraid he won't be weaker than me, or even stronger. Moreover, he has the god sword and several divine embryos. TSKSK, if they can all grow up, he will definitely become a god in the future. In addition, he has 6 dantians, which is really amazing. Legend has it that if one has 9 dantians, he will be the king of gods. Unfortunately, he is still a little bit away from the 9 divine body, but it is enough to be proud of. Apart from that, I can't see through his past and present life. I guess he's also a fallen god. However, Such a guy was snatched away by old lightning. How enviable! Hearing Kirishin's words, the ant stopped feeding the chickens. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. Alas, too many gods have fallen in that war. My old friends have gone to the west. How many gods are still alive in this part of the universe? I'm afraid there are only a handful of them left. Yes. In the past, the intermediate gods were kings, but now the lower gods are kings. All the intermediate gods have fallen. Chapter 3865. Shredded Smoke. At this moment, at the edge of the ancient lake, the water was calm. A fishing rod was like a heavenly pillar, motionless. At the edge of the ancient lake, a young man was wearing a bamboo hat, motionless like a statue. From afar, this young man looked like a villager who had escaped from the slaughter. And he was Lin Ling. Beside him was Xiaoluan, who was also fishing with Lin Ling. The two of them formed a beautiful scene at the edge of the ancient lake. Of course, the giant ghost would interrupt from time to time, breaking the silence. Of course, it talked more about the roasted fish. Junior brother Lin, you've caught quite a lot today. At this moment, a clear and melodious voice rang out. Sister Xueqi was walking over from afar. Moreover, she was leading a cow behind her. Her feet were also covered in yellow mud. Those who did not know her would definitely think that she was a village girl. Sister Xueqi. Lin Ling smiled faintly and greeted her. Sister Xueqi walked over with the cow. She looked at the wooden bucket beside Lin Ling and saw a dozen fat fish. She couldn't help but smile. In this period of time, Lin Ling's fishing skills had improved. The murderous aura on his body had gradually subsided, and even disappeared. He had completely transformed into a mortal. At some point, she also thought that Lin Ling was a villager, just like them. But for them to have this kind of aura, it was after 10,000 years. Lin Ling, on the other hand, had just become a trial taker of the divine. No wonder Lei Gong was full of praise for Lin Ling. The Kirishin said that you don't have to fish tomorrow. The 3 months are up. Sitting beside Lin Ling, Xueqi said with a smile, revealing a row of white teeth. 3 months have passed without me noticing. Lin Ling couldn't help but sigh. He didn't reveal a happy expression, and his mood was calm. He even fell in love with fishing. Fishing might seem dull and tedious, but it was extremely good for tempering one's state of mind. When one was motionless, one would be like a rock, but when one moved, one would be as powerful as a thunderbolt. In fact, Lin Ling did not have an easy time in the beginning during these 3 months. That was because he was a martial artist. In this life he was decisive in killing. How could he stay still? Many times, he had almost used his sword to kill fish. However, with Xiaoluan's help, he managed to endure it in the end. After enduring for the first time, it gradually improved. In the end, he discovered that because of his calm heart, the ancestral power of the tyrannical singing sword had quietly reached 100% ancestral power. Moreover, he had achieved it unknowingly. This meant that Lin Ling could easily unleash this power. Looking back, Lin Ling discovered that in these peaceful days, his strength had advanced by leaps and bounds. According to the evaluation, if he was on the divine list, he would probably be ranked in the top 300. Lin Ling was confident that he could easily defeat a half-step martial god, even if it was an 8th grade ultimate desolate body. Junior brother Lin, I heard that you're going to the ancient dragon desolate land, right? At this moment, Sister Xueqi suddenly whispered. Lin Ling blinked and immediately nodded his head. Hee, take this. Sister Xueqi immediately stuffed a small bag into Lin Ling's hand. Furthermore, she acted sneakily, as if she was afraid of being discovered. The small bag that was stuffed into Lin Ling's hand was wrapped in lotus leaves. Lin Ling opened it and saw that it was filled with tobacco. This made Lin Ling confused. Could it be that Sister Xueqi had invited him to smoke? This is Lord Kirishin's tobacco. Sister Xueqi giggled and said, currently, the ancient dragon desolate land is a training ground for a few junior brothers. If you encounter them, junior brother Lin only needs to take out some tobacco. They will definitely take care of you. You can do that? Lin Ling's eyes immediately lit up. Yes, and when you go to the store to buy things, you can buy them at a 50% discount. Sister Xueqi opened her mouth again. 50% discount? Lin Ling immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. However, he still did not believe it. is this really possible? Of course. Sister Xueqi nodded her head and said proudly, the store is opened by my family. Would those guys who look after the store dare to disobey? Hearing this, Lin Ling could not help but chuckle. This could be considered as going through the back door. Following that, Lin Ling packed up the fishing equipment, took the wooden bucket and walked towards the small forest. Tonight, the courtyard was undoubtedly very lively. The Kuroshin took the opportunity to kill a few more chickens and ate happily. However, the aunt did not object because tonight's meal was obviously to send Lin Ling off. Of course, when Xiaoluan knew that Lin Ling was going to leave, her eyes were red the entire night. In her heart, Lin Ling was her only family. She could not bear for Lin Ling to leave. Lin Ling was a little worried about this at first. However, in these 3 months, Lin Ling had secretly observed that the Kuroshin treated Xiaoluan very well. Xiaoluan had completely accepted them, so Lin Ling could completely leave. Early the next morning, Lin Ling left the small forest. In the courtyard, Xiaoluan bit her lip and watched Lin Ling leave. Sir, in the future, I will look for you. Xiaoluan yelled loudly. Okay, when Xiaoluan becomes stronger, I will protect you. Lin Ling waved his hand with his back facing her and finally disappeared into the forest. Sir, Xiaoluan muttered to herself. However, her eyes quietly turned pitch black and there was a hint of determination in them. She knew very well that if it were not for Lin Ling, she would still be hiding in the cold and damp mine. Perhaps no one would even know if she died. It was Lin Ling who brought her out of this new world. She would never forget this kindness. This bun, Xiaoluan will always keep it. A dry bun appeared in Xiaoluan's hand. This bun was also given to Xiaoluan by Lin Ling in the mine. She obviously could not bear to eat it and had kept it until now. She planned to keep it for the future. After Lin Ling left the small forest, a tall figure was already standing outside. It was the Platinum Evil Ghost. The Platinum Evil Ghost had been waiting for him here for 3 months. Finally left that guy. The giant ghost said coldly. You hate him? Lin Ling looked at the giant ghost and could not help but ask. I can't say that I hate him. However, I know that he has been watching me. The giant ghost said and immediately floated forward. Lin Ling shook his head helplessly. He then looked at the void passage in front of him and there was a hint of light in his eyes. Although the 3 months of boring fishing had wasted a lot of Lin Ling's time, the harvest was also great. That silence would forever remain in Lin Ling's heart. It's time to go to the ancient dragon wasteland. I wonder how it is over there. Moreover, I have to quickly find the old man's shop and see if there are any suitable treasures to buy. Lin Ling also stepped into the void passage. However, he could not help but scold. That old man is so stingy. I am so close to him but he did not give me any treasures. Instead, he eats the fish I catch every day and is stingy. Moreover, he opened a shop in the wasteland. Is he crazy? He still looked down on the Kuroshin. He hoped that Lei Gong would not be as stingy as the Kuroshin. Achoo! Chapter 3866. Heading towards the ancient dragon wasteland. These curses also caused the people in the courtyard to laugh quietly. They subconsciously looked into the distance. They knew that it wouldn't be long before they would also be able to see Lin Ling at Lei Gong's place. After Lin Ling entered the spatial passageway, he reappeared at the ancient Yuan mountain range. 3 months had passed, and peace had also returned to the great grassland. The various large mines continued to operate. However, the great battle 3 months ago had also left behind countless legends. A great battle between martial gods. The son of the undying demon, Lin Ling. Especially the son of the undying demon, Lin Ling. This was even more shocking. This was because Lin Ling had once again survived at the hands of the 10 great martial gods of the 9 states. Moreover, he had even killed the second leader of the place of eternal rest, Wanyan Shijing. Such news had already spread throughout the various large mines. Everyone was shocked, and no one was unconvinced. Even the mines of the God Slayer Alliance had received this news. Sakura and the others were undoubtedly extremely excited. This was because they had all been to the depths of the ancient Yuan mountain range. However, there, they could only keep a low profile like passers-by. In fact, they had even thought that Lin Ling would also keep a low profile like passers-by. However, who knew that this guy would also kill the leader of the Heaven-Crushing Alliance? This undoubtedly caused the reputation of the God Slayer Alliance to soar. In reality, this was indeed a single wave that caused 1,000 ripples. This was because the nearby mines had all given Lin Ling face. This was especially true for the Red Alliance. Not only did this group of people not dare to cause trouble, they even took the initiative to apologize to him. Moreover, the various leaders were all rejoicing. Fortunately, they hadn't provoked Lin Ling otherwise. The consequences would definitely be the eradication of the Red Alliance. Without a doubt, the God Slayer Alliance's foundation in the Great Grassland had also been firmly established. Lin Ling obviously didn't know about this. At this moment, he was walking in the direction of the ancient Dragon Wasteland. His current location was also very close to the ancient Dragon Wasteland. Finally, when a gigantic abandoned mine appeared in front of him, Lin Ling looked at the map. He finally knew that this was the entrance to the ancient Dragon Wasteland. That abandoned mine was very, very big, and it was endless. It was like a huge city wall, and there was a gap in it. That gap was the entrance to the ancient Dragon Wasteland. Furthermore, because of the appearance of the Kurashin store, many experts attempted to enter the ancient Dragon Wasteland. These experts didn't seem to have come from the Guyuan mountain range. Among them were students of the academy, the major alliances, and the major powers. However, unlike the ancient Yuan mountain range, these experts came from the final world. Clearly, if one wanted to enter the ancient Dragon Wasteland, the most basic requirement was to be a martial artist of the final world. What a huge city! At the edge of the huge gap, a prosperous ancient city was built there. It could be seen that this ancient city used to be one of the mines, but it was abandoned. If one wanted to enter the ancient Dragon Wasteland, this city was the only supply station, so the business in the ancient city had always been good. Lin Ling immediately led the golden white demon towards the ancient city. This was because he currently wanted to enter the ancient Dragon Desolate Land, but he did not know where to enter. After all, if he forcefully barged in, it would be equivalent to breaking the rules. As for the consequences of breaking the rules, Lin Ling did not know, but he guessed that it was definitely not good. On the road leading to the ancient city, a large number of young people walked forward. If one looked carefully, there were actually many half-step martial god experts. On the contrary, there were fewer old monsters. Even if there were, they were mysterious, making people feel very strange. This ancient Dragon Wasteland has already been open for 3 months. We are considered the third batch to enter. Luckily, I got a spot. Hee, tomorrow is the day when it opens, so I managed to catch up. Your luck is not bad. But have you joined an alliance? Yes. I'm from the Guangfeng Union. Our leader is the 372nd canon god on the gods list. I've also joined the Purple Cloud Union. You've really thought it through thoroughly, you bastard. There was no lack of chatterbox people on the road. This seemed to be an extremely common thing in any city. Therefore, it wasn't difficult for Lin Ling to find out the information he needed. First, the ancient Dragon Wasteland had already been open for 3 months. Second, tomorrow was the day when it opened. This meant that Lin Ling did not miss this opportunity. As for alliances, Lin Ling was not surprised because there were many alliances in the ancient Yuan mountain range. This atmosphere also came from the final world. Lin Ling also opened the chaos ear to listen to the voice of all things and collect information. However, there was not much valuable information. Lin Ling only knew that the 9 prefectures 10 vicious who had entered the ancient Dragon Wasteland, other than the Immortal Temple, there were other forces. This made Lin Ling somewhat expectant. He didn't know if he would encounter the Creation Alliance. After all, he had not met the 9-lantern fish senior Lu Chen for a long time. After a moment, when Lin Ling entered the ancient city, he immediately heard a few familiar voices, causing him to smile. Snow Wind Academy also got a spot. Then he put away the chaos ear and walked along the street. Not long after, 4 figures appeared in front of him. They were all wearing the robes of the Snow Wind Academy and were talking excitedly. Hee, my mother finally got a spot. I heard that this ancient Dragon Wasteland was opened by the gods. I wonder what kind of treasures we can buy. Tianao, your mother is the dean. She is indeed powerful. But how can the treasures in the god shop be weak? Anyway, I am so excited. I just spent 5 billion Emperor crystals to take the teleportation array here. Although it was painful to spend, it was worth it. Luo Wucheng, You originally wanted to go through the ancient Yuan mountain range and the ancient Yuan forest. Fortunately, I didn't listen to you. Otherwise, we would have missed this opening and can only enter next month. Hee hee, I'm just worried about that little bit of money. We have already got a spot for you and you still want to save money? These 4 figures were all acquaintances of Lin Ling. The leader was Xueqi, the second strongest person in the Divine Third Hall of the Snow Wind Academy. He had also gone to the E-Garden with Lin Ling in the past. The other 3 were the Dean's son, Tianao, Luo Wuchang and Zhuang Yanming. Obviously, the Snow Wind Academy had found 4 spots for them. And these 4 people were either very strong or had good backers. So, they came to represent the Snow Wind Academy. Of course, compared to other academies, the Snow Wind Academy spots were actually very few. Moreover, they were different from Lin Ling. They came by the god's teleportation array. This kind of array was set up by the god Miao's true disciples and the fee was expensive. Usually, it was not available because the god Miao's true disciples knew that many people wanted to go directly to this place. So 2 months ago, they worked overnight and finally set it up completely. From this god's teleportation array, one could reach the final world and quickly reach here from there. Everyone, be careful. This is not the final world. Killing people is not a problem. As a senior, Xueqi was obviously cautious, so he could not help but remind them. Hee hee, what are you afraid of? Chapter 3867. See Tianao again. You guys sigh. Xueqi sighed, do you know? Many of those who went to the ancient dragon wasteland are big shots. There are the 9 states 10 vicious. There are huge forces in the final world like the Duan family, Miaoshen's true disciple, they all have people who entered. As for the students of the academy, they have formed an alliance. We have not joined any alliance. Wind Snow Academy also has no alliance. If we provoke others, we will definitely suffer. Hearing this, Tianao and the rest finally restrained themselves, but they were still not very afraid and laughed. As long as we don't provoke others, isn't that enough? Senior Zhong, I think you're just a bird that's startled by the twang of a bow. But can you guarantee that others will not provoke you? Xueqi carefully looked ahead, as if he was afraid of being targeted by some old monster. However, his words made Tianao and the rest curled their lips and did not refute. Because Xueqi's words made sense. Xueqi was still cautiously staring into the distance, but at this moment, a palm suddenly patted his shoulder, and there was a faint laughter. This pat undoubtedly made Xueqi's body tremble and he immediately sat on the ground. His face was pale as he begged, Senior, we are just young students of the academy. Don't kill me, don't kill me. Tianao and the rest's faces changed because they also knew that this was not the Wind Snow Academy. Killing and robbing on the street was not impossible. But, why were they so unlucky? Someone had to provoke them. They could not help but turn their heads to look and were stunned. Then their mouths were wide open. Because, this is Lin Ling? Hee hee, long time no see. Lin Ling looked at them with a smile. Of course, he was also surprised by Xueqi's appearance. What happened to this guy? He was so scared that he became a turtle. Xueqi almost knelt down and begged for mercy. Although he was not weak, his character was a little timid. Otherwise, the first place of the Shensan Hall would have been him, and not Kagura. Lin Ling. Then, he looked up and suddenly laughed. What the hell are you doing? Lin Ling looked at him strangely. His words made Xueqi extremely embarrassed, while Tianao and the rest laughed. Let's not talk about it anymore. I don't want to embarrass Senior Zhong. But you, why are you here? Then, Tianao punched Lin Ling in the chest and laughed. His voice was a little excited. Clearly, he was also very surprised by Lin Ling's appearance here. Could it be that you also want to go to the ancient dragon desolate land? Speaking of which, the dean had already fought for a spot for you, but he didn't see you for a long time. In the end, he could only let the 4 of us come. Luo Wuchang added. Don't worry, I already have a spot. Lin Ling shrugged and said. What a joke, he had just come back from fishing with the mastermind. How could he not be qualified to enter? Wow, you're amazing. By the way, where have you been all this time? Why haven't I seen you around? Zhuang Yanming also spoke. Obviously, they had come here by teleportation array, so they did not know about the Guyuan mountain range. If they knew, they they would probably follow Zhong Jin's example and fall to the ground in shock. Also, are you going to fight martial god Wen Tian's disciple? Everyone in the final world is talking about you right now. Next, they began to chatter among themselves. Lin Ling helplessly slapped his forehead and said, "This is a long story. Let's talk about it as we walk." "All right." Tianao and the rest nodded excitedly. The few of them walked forward and finally found a restaurant to sit down and reminisce about the past while waiting for the opening of the ancient Dragon Desolate Land tomorrow. This restaurant was called Elegant Monarch Restaurant. Compared to the restaurants in Plentiful City, it was undoubtedly more elegant. After all, one was an Orvain and the other was an abandoned Orvain. Relying on martial artists to drive income, how could the restaurant's decoration be bad? After entering the restaurant, it was packed with people. Most of them were actually students from the academy. There were experts from the third Divine Hall and the second Divine Hall who were happily chatting with each other. Obviously, they were very excited about entering the ancient Dragon Desolate Land tomorrow. For them to appear here, it meant that their background was not small. Otherwise, they would not have been able to get a spot. The hall on the first floor was full, so Lin Ling and the rest went directly to the second floor. However, the second floor was also bustling with noise. Fortunately, there was an empty table. Then, Lin Ling and the rest sat down. Lin Ling called for the waiter to serve wine and dishes. Currently, Lin Ling had a large amount of royal crystals, so he wanted to treat these seniors and juniors to a meal. It had to be said that the Elegant Monarch restaurant's food was indeed good. The wine was also very tasty. Always drinking strong wine, occasionally drinking this pure wine is also very good. Lin Ling drank 3 cups in a row and nodded. Tianao and the rest were the same. After clinking their cups with Lin Ling, they ate heartily. Then, they asked Lin Ling about the arranged battle. However, just as Lin Ling was about to speak, the restaurant was filled with discussions. Moreover, the voices were not soft. "Have you heard? Ting Yu Qiu Feng from the royal restaurant. He took first place in the competition between the 5 academies. Moreover, he is the newest student of the 36 academies. However, he rushed into the third hall in 10 years and became one of the new kings of the 36 academies. He is ranked 9th. The person who spoke, his voice was filled with pride. The Royal Academy was a mid-ranked academy among the 36 academies. Most importantly, this person was also a member of the Royal Academy. Lin Ling and the rest shook their heads. This person was flattering their own academy. However, they were too lazy to care. However, at this moment, more discussions were heard. The 9th king of the newcomers? Isn't that more powerful than Lin Ling from before? It said that Lin Ling is also one of the newcomer kings. He also came out of nowhere during this period of time. Especially after the battle at E Garden, some people say that he already has 1 foot in the strongest circle of Shen San Hall. Lin Ling is also considered the king of the newcomers. However, he is still not as good as Ting Yu Qiu Feng because it is said that the latter has entered the top 300 of the divine list and his talent is 8th grade. When Lin Ling defeated Duan Wu Hen, he was barely in the top 400 of the divine list. The top 10 king of the newcomers, the rankings have finally changed. The more they spoke, the more excited they became. At Lin Ling's table, Tianao suddenly stood up. This ranking was too decisive. It actually said that Lin Ling was weaker than Ting Yu Qiu Feng. This made him very unhappy. Of course, even the timid Zhong Jin was very unhappy. After all, he was a student of the Snow Wind Academy. "Let's eat." However, Lin Ling stopped them. This made them very angry, but in the end, they sat down. Following that, Lin Ling gently shook his head. Ting Yu Qiu Feng? The name was quite elegant. He had an 8th grade ultimate desolate body and was ranked in the 300th place on the divine ranking. His strength was not bad either. Unfortunately, Lin Ling had already defeated a few 8th grade ultimate desolate body experts. Furthermore, he had already entered the 300th place. Chapter 3868. Ting Yu Autumn Wind. Say, do you think Ting Feng Autumn Rain will become the 8th rookie king? From what I know, to become the rookie king, all of them have stepped into the strongest circle of the divine 3 halls. That's possible. Currently, other than the number 1 rookie king, Long Yang, everyone else can be defeated by Ting Feng Autumn Rain. That's right. However, we are still guessing based on our evaluation. After all, no one has seen whether Ting Feng Qiuyu can defeat Lin Ling. Are you dumb? Are you dumb? Lin Ling's battle at E Garden was witnessed by everyone. He was not a match for an 8th grade ultimate desolate body, while brother Ting Feng Autumn Rain has an 8th grade ultimate desolate body. That's right. When Lin Ling meets Ting Feng Autumn Rain, he is as weak as a dog. That's right. I heard that this Lin Ling even dared to challenge Longyang. That's just a joke. That guy knows nothing about strength. The more they spoke, the more agitated they became. Tian Ao and company became angrier the more they heard. These people were too good at bullshitting. They spoke based on their own opinions. Of course, if this matter had nothing to do with them, they would treat it as a joke. However, the Lin Ling they spoke of was Snow Wind Academy's #1 expert. Bullshit. Are you done talking? Tian Ao finally stood up and said coldly. The second floor hall suddenly became silent as everyone looked at Tian Ao. Suddenly, someone sneered. No wonder you don't know etiquette. So you are from Snow Wind Academy. You must have mentioned Lin Ling, so you are angry. No, it's your mouths that are full of shit. Nothing good comes out of a dog's mouth. I really can't take it anymore. If you want to say it, please lower your voice. Don't disturb others from eating. Tian Ao said word by word. Also, let me remind you. You can eat whatever you want, but don't speak whatever you want. How dare you? At this moment, someone suddenly slammed the table and stood up angrily. From the looks of it, he was about to attack Tian Ao. But at this moment, a table near the window suddenly shouted. Look, isn't that Ting Yu Autumn Wind, the #1 of the 5 academies exchange competition? As soon as he finished speaking, there was a commotion on the second floor. Many people looked through the windows and saw a young man with golden hair fluttering in the wind. He was dressed in a gorgeous robe and was slowly walking over with several experts of the academy. He had a sword hanging from his waist and his eyes were half closed. His expression was extremely proud and aloof. However, he had obtained such a reputation at such a young age. It was inevitable that he would be proud and aloof. After all, there were so many people in the 36 academies. It wasn't easy to become one of the top 10 newcomers. When the students who passed by saw him, they all greeted him politely. Obviously, these people also knew that in the final world, unless you had absolute strength, there was nothing wrong with making friends with more powerhouses. Lin Ling's soul force was very sharp. Naturally, he could sense that an expert had appeared below the restaurant. However, when he sensed the arrogance of this person, he shook his head and lowered his evaluation of Ting Feng Qiuyu. Because if this person came from the ancient Yuan mountain range, then he would definitely know that there was always someone better than him. At this moment, Ting Yu Qiufeng suddenly stopped and seemed to have taken a fancy to the elegant Monarch restaurant. He brought his juniors and walked in. The first floor's hall was obviously full. These people all greeted Ting Yu Qiufeng and the latter nodded lightly. There's no more seats. I have some here. Someone took the initiative to give up their seats. No need. Senior Ting Feng likes higher places. Let's go to the second floor. The juniors behind Ting Yu Qiufeng said indifferently. Following their seniors, their attitudes also became arrogant. Then, the few of them went up to the second floor. On the second floor, everyone was excited. It's Senior Ting Feng. I didn't expect him to come too. Tiska SK. Is this the newcomer king? I didn't expect that I would have the fate to meet him. Sure enough, I didn't come to the ancient dragon desolate land in vain. That's for sure. There are so many people in the 36 academies. It's your fortune to be able to meet Senior Ting Feng here. Their voices were not soft. On the stairs, Ting Feng Qiuyu revealed a satisfied smile. He didn't expect that in a place like Kai Yuan River, so many people would know his name. Then, he went up to the second floor. Everyone on the second floor immediately stood up and smiled. Ting Feng Qiuyu nodded lightly. Suddenly, his gaze swept around and found that a person sitting at a table by the window was ignoring him. This made him frown imperceptibly. Everyone, because I don't like noise when I eat, I'll have to trouble you to go to the first floor. I'll take care of all your food and drinks. How about it? At this moment, a bag of emperor crystals appeared in Ting Feng Qiuyu's hand and he threw it to the first floor. Immediately, a shopkeeper ran up with a face full of joy. Thank you for coming, young master. It's the restaurant's greatest honor. Young master wants to book the entire second floor. That's not a problem. But what about them? At this point, the shopkeeper looked at the people on the second floor. His meaning was to see if they agreed or not. This shopkeeper was obviously a smart person. In this way, he wouldn't offend either side. You have any objections? Ting Feng Qiuyu looked at the crowd again. No objections. It's our honor. Senior Ting Feng, we don't need you to pay for our food. How embarrassing. Yes, yes. Everyone said with a smile. Hee, I don't care about this little bit of money. Ting Feng Qiuyu smiled for the first time, but it was a generous smile. Go, I'll take care of all your expenses. The last sentence was even more domineering. Thank you, Senior Ting Feng. Everyone was overjoyed and left the second floor one after another. However, there was still a person sitting at a table on the second floor who didn't leave. This made Ting Feng Qiuyu frown. Speaking of which, were those people idiots? Or did they not understand human language? The shopkeeper was also a smart person. He immediately understood and walked to the table with a smile. Dear guests, what do you think? This table belonged to Lin Ling and the rest. Lin Ling and the rest were still eating and drinking. However, at this time, a money bag appeared in Lin Ling's hand. He gently placed it on the table and said, We'll book this restaurant today. Everyone's food and expenses will be on me, including the people on the first floor. When these words were said, the second floor fell silent. Those who were walking down the stairs stopped in their tracks. The shopkeeper's eyes widened. However, Lin Ling wasn't done. He said again, as for those who didn't order food, tell them to scram. When the word scram was said, everyone knew who he was talking about. Because up until now, there was no one else who hadn't ordered food and drinks other than Ting Feng Qiuyu and the rest. Ting Feng Qiuyu was also stunned. Then he laughed. It was a cold laugh. He didn't know why that person was so bold, but to be so bold in front of him, he really didn't know how to behave. Chapter 3869. Remember, it's scram. 10 million royal crystals was not a problem for him to buy heavenly materials and earthly treasures, let alone food. Therefore, he did not believe that those pretentious guys would be more generous than him. Hearing his words, the shopkeeper was also deeply afraid of being cheated. He quickly poured out the money bag in his hand. However, it didn't matter if he didn't pour it out. After pouring it out, he also gasped. What? 100 million monarch crystals? His heart was pounding. 100 million emperor crystals for a meal? Tycoon. 100% tycoon. As for those people on the stairs, they were all trembling at this moment. Those who were panicking almost lost their balance and fell to the first floor. Speaking of which, 100 million monarch crystals for a meal was more than enough for dragon meat. Speaking of which, Senior Tingfeng's 10 million royal crystals was like a beggar compared to the other party. This slap was undoubtedly very satisfying. Senior Tingfeng must be very embarrassed right now. Where did these guys from the Snow Wind Academy come from? How could they be so rich? Isn't Snow Wind Academy at the bottom? Who cares if he's at the bottom? If he can treat us to a meal, then he's our big brother. Not only the second floor, even the first floor was filled with discussions. This was because Lin Ling had invited the entire restaurant, including them. On the other hand, Ting Feng Qiuyu had only invited the second floor, so they naturally sided with Lin Ling. Senior, these people are too arrogant. Should we? Behind Ting Feng Qiuyu, the faces of the juniors turned ugly. They were originally enjoying the respect and admiration of the crowd, but who knew that those people would pour cold water on them and deliberately embarrass them? However, Ting Feng Qiuyu waved his hand casually. He looked at Lin Ling and the others and said, I don't know which school you are from, but have you thought about the consequences of doing this? Consequences? Lin Ling couldn't help but take a sip of wine. They were eating their own food, yet Ting Feng and Qiuyu chased them away as if they were rich. Now, they were asking for the consequences? What a joke. In terms of money, Lin Ling wasn't afraid of him at all. I don't know what the consequences are. Why don't you tell me? Lin Ling played with a wine cup in his hand and said. Hearing this, Ting Feng Qiuyu's face instantly darkened. It had been a long time since he met such an arrogant person. Seeing that things were not going well, the shopkeeper quickly tried to smooth things over. Heroes, young masters, it doesn't matter where we eat. Why don't we shake hands and make peace? Shake hands? Before Lin Ling could speak, Tian-Ao had already spoken. Shopkeeper, do you want 100 million royal crystals? Feng Qiuyu's? Feng Qiuyu. The shopkeeper immediately smiled apologetically. Was there even a need to choose? Feng Qiuyu. Then did you hear what we said? Feng Qiuyu. Tian-Ao shouted. The shopkeeper looked at Feng Qiuyu when he said that. Feng Qiuyu. Feng. Feng Qiuyu and the others were trembling with anger. They had walked proudly in the various academies, and this was the first time they met someone who used money to throw it at them. I'll give you one more chance. Get out of here. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. Feng Qiuyu's voice became low. What do you mean by being rude? Lin Ling asked. If you don't get out, I'll make you get out. I'll break your legs and make you get out of the restaurant. Feng Qiuyu said. Lin Ling shook his head. He took a sip of wine and said slowly, hee, I'm so scared. Please do it. You're asking for it. Behind Feng Qiuyu, someone finally couldn't take it anymore and shouted. His boundary chi shook in the air and turned into a claw that grabbed towards Lin Ling. He sneered and said, You should thank Senior Ting Feng for being merciful because he only crippled your legs. If this happened outside the city, you would have been killed already. Before Lin Ling could do anything, Tian-Ao attacked first. His boundary essence surged and he threw out a palm. His palm clenched into a fist in mid-air. Since they were in the city, both sides did not dare to be too arrogant. They only clashed with each other's boundary essence. Boom! A dull sound was heard. Feng Qiuyu's junior was sent flying. He staggered backward and was caught by Feng Qiuyu. The junior kept spitting out blood. Tian-Ao was the son of the dean. His strength had increased greatly during this period of time. He easily defeated the expert from the third hall. This meant that Tian-Ao had also stepped into the ranks of the divine three halls. Lin Ling nodded. Tian-Ao's talent was not weak. He was willing to work hard and learn. It was normal for his strength to increase. Peak martial ancestor. No wonder he's so confident. As for Feng Qiuyu, he was somewhat surprised because he had already seen that these people were from the Snow Wind Academy. However, he did not expect that the people from the Snow Wind Academy would be so powerful. Of course, he was only slightly surprised. He wasn't afraid at all. Go, he said coldly. Behind him, the three juniors attacked at the same time. Although they were not very talented, they were at the peak martial ancestor realm. Although Tian-Ao was stronger, fighting against three people at the same time was beyond his ability. He was at a disadvantage. Break their legs and destroy their elixir fields. Let them know that I, Feng Qiuyu, am a man of my words. Seeing this, Feng Qiuyu said coldly. However, at this moment, the huge bodyguard who had been standing behind Lin Ling finally made his move. He reached out his palm and broke the opponent's boundary energy. He easily grabbed the opponent's arm and twisted it. The person immediately screamed like a pig being butchered and rolled on the ground. The other people were also easily defeated by the bodyguard. They were lying on the ground and screaming like pigs being slaughtered. If one looked carefully, one would see that their arms were all broken. As for Feng Qiuyu, he frowned. He immediately realized that the strength of the bodyguard was extraordinary. He had probably reached the martial god realm. He was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He did not expect that after being humiliated, he would not be able to take revenge. He had lost all his face. Bringing a martial god realm bodyguard. So he's rich. No wonder he has so many imperial crystals. However, the green mountain will not change and the green water will continue to flow. We'll meet again. Feng Qiuyu did not want to stay there. He ordered his men to carry the crippled people on the ground and planned to leave the restaurant. The people on the first floor finally heaved a sigh of relief. The battle was finally over. The innkeeper, in particular, was so excited that he laughed. However, just as everyone thought that the battle was over, a calm voice suddenly said, "Wait, did I say that you can leave?" His words silenced the restaurant. Feng Qiuyu had already turned around. When he heard that sentence, he frowned. He had already lost so much face. Was this guy still not going to let it go? He sneered and said, "What are you trying to do?" However, Lin Ling ignored him. He slowly tasted the wine in his hand. After swallowing it, he said calmly, Chapter 3870. Attack. Hearing this, the crowd stared with their eyes open wide. Although the young man's bodyguard was quite powerful, Ting Feng Qiuyu was the newcomer king, who was said to be ranked 300 on the heavenly stairway. How could he cripple his legs and ask him to leave? Was the young man out of his mind? After all, the royal school would not let him go if he dared to attack the newcomer king. I've already decided to settle the matter peacefully, but you're asking me to stay, and even ask me to leave? Ting Feng Qiuyu slowly turned around and stared at Lin Ling with a hideous grin. However, Lin Ling remained calm. I'm not going to say the same thing twice. If you don't cripple your legs, I'll do it myself. You're just relying on your bodyguard. Without him, you're nothing. How dare you ask me to do it myself? Hearing this, Ting Feng Qiuyu burst out laughing, but his eyes flickered with a hint of murderous intent. Don't tell me you're going to cripple me. As a matter of fact, he had heard this from Feng Qiuyu before, but now, Lin Ling had returned it to him. Although Ting Feng Qiuyu was smiling on the surface, he was laughing in his heart too. It had been a long time since he had met such an arrogant student. Besides, the Wind Snow Academy? Wasn't that trashy place ranked at the bottom? Although Ting Feng Qiuyu seemed to be laughing, he was actually laughing out of anger. That's what I was going to say. However, Lin Ling nodded his head honestly. His words caused Ting Feng Qiuyu to be stunned, as blue veins began to appear on his forehead. Kid, I'll teach you how to behave. Without wasting any more time, he immediately attacked with the strength of the peak martial progenitor realm and his 8th grade talent. That being said, since the city was filled with experts, he did not dare to act recklessly, thus he gathered his strength into a single point. However, in his opinion, it was enough to cripple the kid. Tianao and the others immediately rose from their seats and were about to attack, but Lin Ling waved his hand to stop them. It was obvious that Ting Feng Qiuyu was leaving him to Lin Ling. Following this, Lin Ling reached out his hand facing Ting Feng Qiuyu, as the realm qi in his body rumbled. Ha! 6th level martial ancestor? Ting Feng Qiuyu was stunned. He had thought that the guy was a peak martial progenitor, or even a half-step martial god. However, he was only an intermediate martial progenitor. He had even defeated a half-martial god realm cultivator before, let alone a mid-martial progenitor realm cultivator. The auras of the two sides were clear at a glance. On the stairs of the restaurant, everyone's jaws dropped. Then, they all covered their mouths and laughed. If the blue-robed kid relied on his bodyguards, then Ting Feng Qiuyu could only leave with his tail between his legs. Relying on himself? Speaking of which, was this young master stupid? Look. Listen to the wind and autumn rain's innate talent, the 8th grade worldly heavenly wind eagle. Someone suddenly exclaimed in shock as he looked at the second floor. His eyes were filled with envy and shock. This was because behind Ting Feng Qiuyu, an awe-inspiring ancient eagle appeared. It was arrogant and untamable with a white head. At this moment, it spread its wings and stirred up a terrifying astral wind. However, this astral wind only appeared within half a meter of Autumn Rain's body. It did not affect the restaurant at all. This showed Ting Feng Qiuyu's ability to control his boundary qi. Meanwhile, in the air, Ting Feng Qiuyu turned his palm into a claw and tore the rift in front of him apart, forming 5 streams of wind as he grabbed at Qi Nan. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle's as he was planning to tear the kid into pieces. No, he was planning to shatter the kid's legs. Bang! Under the crowd's gaze, the claw and the palm collided. The rift at the center of the collision exploded as a storm was formed. If it were to explode, it would surely destroy the place. That young master must be out of his mind. At that instant, even the owner could tell that Lin Ling was at a disadvantage. The fact that he was able to open a restaurant here was proof of his strength and insight. He could clearly sense that the talent of the godly eagle was 8th grade. Its speed had most likely reached the speed of 1,000 worlds, while its cultivation was at the peak martial progenitor realm. On the other hand, the rich kid was too weak. He had yet to see his talent. It was most likely that his cultivation was too low, thus he was overwhelmed by the godly eagle. As for his cultivation, the owner could not bear to watch any longer. He rubbed his eyes. In fact, everyone had seen the battle clearly. Their expressions were the same as the shopkeepers. Even the more timid ones covered their eyes. They couldn't bear to watch anymore because they knew that what was about to happen would be a bloody scene. Even Tianao and the rest frowned slightly. Based on their understanding of Lin Ling, they were still in the E-garden, so they couldn't help but worry. However, under the crowd's gaze, Lin Ling's palm gently touched the godly eagle's claw. Suddenly, his palm turned into a claw and grabbed Ting Feng Qiuyu's claw. Furthermore, the claw had caused Ting Feng Qiuyu's previous strength to vanish. What? Ting Feng Qiuyu's eyes narrowed. He had guessed that his claw would be able to destroy all of Lin Ling's boundary qi. However, he suddenly felt that Qi Nan's strength was unfathomable. It was as if the kid before him was not a mid-stage martial progenitor. His boundary qi was not much weaker than his. Impossible. Ting Feng Qiuyu snapped as he channeled all of his boundary qi into his arm. However, before his eyes, Lin Ling grabbed with one hand while a large number of monarch crystals appeared in his other hand. Following this, he began to refine them. Is he recovering his boundary qi? It seems like it. After all, his boundary qi is nowhere close to Senior Ting Feng's. It's normal for him to recover his boundary qi with monarch crystals. However, how could his recovery speed match the rate of consumption? The crowd burst into an uproar. The battle was simply too strange. Bang! However, a powerful boundary qi exploded all of a sudden. Furthermore, it felt like the sign of a breakthrough. The person who had unleashed the boundary qi was none other than Lin Ling. The crowd was dumbfounded. He was not recovering his boundary qi, but breaking through? They were all martial progenitor experts, thus they were well aware of the aura of a breakthrough. However, the young man's breakthrough was simply too strange. Even though the young man had broken through, he still looked like a sixth-layer martial progenitor. Furthermore, there was no martial progenitor's tribulation. Most importantly, the young man had broken through during the battle against Ting Feng Qiuyu. Speaking of which, wasn't he worried that his cultivation would go berserk? It was obvious that Lin Ling's unique style had greatly exceeded the crowd's understanding. Little did they know that Lin Ling had already broken through in the woods. Even the tribulation of the progenitor realm had been blocked when he was devoured by the darkness. Even though it seemed like he was breaking through, he was only breaking through his other dantians. On top of that, as he continued to refine the monarch crystals, his second dantian had successfully reached the sixth-layer martial progenitor realm. The overwhelming boundary qi suppressed Ting Feng Qiuyu until his face turned pale. In his eyes, the young man before him was a monster. Even though his cultivation was only at the sixth-layer martial progenitor realm, his boundary qi was comparable to the peak martial progenitor realm. Chapter 3871. My name is Lin Ling. However, the shock did not end there. His third dantian broke through. Feng Qiuyu muttered to himself, this realm essence has probably reached the peak of its peak. However, the fourth, fifth, and sixth broke through again. Every time his dantian broke through, the terrifying aura was like an avalanche. Could this be a half-step martial god realm Jieyuan? Lin Ling still grabbed Autumn Rain Listener's hand, but he was already powerless to kneel down. This was because Lin Ling didn't even use his innate talent. Just the waves of boundary essence had already shocked him to the point that he was completely powerless. The 6 dantians were equivalent to the boundary essences of 6 mid-stage martial progenitors. In terms of boundary essences, Lin Ling was a few times stronger than Ting Feng Qiuyu. As for talent, there was no need to talk about it. Everyone's jaws dropped. They had imagined Lin Ling's right arm being torn apart by Ting Feng Qiuyu's claw, and they had imagined his legs being broken, and they had even imagined him being beaten to his knees. However, they had never imagined such an outcome. Ouch ouch ouch! As for Ting Feng Qiuyu, whose hand was grabbed by Lin Ling, he constantly shouted out. He could sense that not only was this youth's boundary essence terrifying, but his fleshly body strength was also terrifying. However, Lin Ling didn't say anything. His eyes suddenly turned cold. Although he was fishing in the Kurishin territory and calmed his heart, it did not mean that Lin Ling would be soft-hearted. When fishing, one is as immovable as a mountain. When the fish is hooked, the moment it moves, it will be as powerful as thunder. Crack crack. Lin Ling exerted a bit of force with his right hand, and Autumn Rain's palm immediately twisted like a fried dough twist. His 5 fingers turned outwards, and he cried out in pain. Tears even flowed out. The second floor was silent. Countless people on the first floor peeked their heads up to see who was screaming. But when they saw who was screaming, all of them had their mouths agape. Was this the newcomer king? Ting Feng Qiuyu didn't have time to curse because the 10 fingers were connected to the heart. Moreover, his talent was displayed on the palm. Now that his 5 fingers were crippled, he almost fainted from the pain. However, Lin Ling's eyes turned cold, and his left hand also slapped Ting Feng Qiuyu's dantian. Today, if the golden white evil spirit wasn't here, and if he wasn't strong enough, this guy would definitely cripple him. Therefore, Lin Ling would never show mercy to those who wanted to cripple him. Even teaching Ting Feng Qiuyu how to behave. You know nothing about power. After the palm hit, countless evil ghost jellyfish surged out from the palm and rushed into Autumn Rain Ting's body. Then they started to devour him. Ting Feng Qiuyu's body trembled as he screamed even louder. He could feel that his dantian was collapsing because a mysterious force was rushing in and devouring everything. He was instantly shocked. His 8th grade ultimate desolate body could not withstand this person's attack? However, Lin Ling also quickly retracted his palm, but also turned it into a hand blade, fiercely chopping out. Blood gushed out. Ting Feng Qiuyu's legs were forcefully severed, and he was sent flying. He crashed onto the ground and rolled around in pain. This scene caused everyone to tremble. They had clearly seen through something. Ting Feng Qiuyu had been crippled. His legs had also been severed. 5 of his fingers had been twisted off. Could it be that the blue-robed youth was from one of the strongest circles in the 3rd hall? At this moment, everyone's faces turned pale as cold sweat dripped down their foreheads. Kill him! Kill him! Kill! Ting Feng Qiuyu, who was on the ground, no longer had Ting Feng's elegance. He roared at Lin Ling like a hooligan. This was because he had been crippled. Although his talent still existed, it would probably take him a few hundred years to return to his current realm. He might even need to undergo tribulations again. If he wasn't careful, he might be crippled for life. This. Kill. The legs of Ting Feng Qiuyu's juniors were trembling. How could they dare to move? The blue-robed youth's methods were too ruthless. Kill him. If not, how are you going to answer to the dean when you return? Kill. Upon seeing this, Ting Feng Qiuyu roared again. That's right. The juniors thought of the dignified dean. At this moment, they released their boundary force and glared at Lin Ling. Even if they were no match for Lin Ling, they should at least demand an explanation from Lin Ling. Upon seeing this, Lin Ling shook his head. He was helpless against this group of idiots. Soon, the tyrannical song sword appeared in Lin Ling's hand and he slashed gently. Let's think about this when we return to the academy. Slash. With this slash, the juniors' legs were all severed. Fresh blood dyed the floor of the 2nd floor red. One should know that these juniors were all late-stage and peak-stage martial ancestors. However, they could not block this slash. Moreover, he slashed wherever he wanted. His control over his strength was 10 times more ferocious than Ting Feng Qiuyu's. The crowd's eyes continued to tremble. This slash was too powerful. Then, they looked at the people who were rolling on the ground and shuddered. They could not wait to leave this place immediately. This was especially so for those who had bickered with Tian Ao earlier. They were so frightened that they almost knelt down. This was because they had told Tian Ao and the others how powerful Ting Feng Qiuyu was. However, the people they had said were powerful had their elixir fields destroyed and their legs broken. They had become disabled. The difference between their imagination and reality was too great. Shopkeeper. At this moment, Lin Ling slowly put away his sword and looked at the shopkeeper calmly. Young hero, please speak, please speak. Yes. The shopkeeper immediately nodded and bowed. He did not dare to raise his head to look at Lin Ling. He did not expect that after meeting so many customers in his life, there would be one that he did not dare to look directly at. I'm sorry for destroying your restaurant. I'll give you another 100 million royal crystals. Is that enough? Yes. Lin Ling tidied up and said with a smile. It's enough. It's enough. Actually, I don't need that much. In total, I don't even need 100 royal crystals. These things are not worth much. The shopkeeper quickly waved his hand and said, It's okay. 100 million royal crystals are not worth much to me. All right. Lin Ling nodded at Tianao and the others and strode up the stairs to the second floor. The shopkeeper's heart trembled when he heard this. 100 million royal crystals wasn't worth much. Moreover, his opponent had said that he wanted to cripple him, so he had acted decisively and crippled him in return. This was a cultivator who could travel the world freely. Seeing that Lin Ling and the others were about to leave, Ting Feng Qiuyu and the others on the ground were shocked and quickly crawled away. Hee, I forgot. I told you to get lost but you didn't. You wanted us to do it. All right. Suddenly, Tianao stopped. Then, he took a step forward and kicked everyone on the ground like sandbags. Rumble! One of the walls of the restaurant was kicked open and a large number of people fell from the second floor. It was extremely embarrassing. They've all been kicked out. All right. This caused the hearts of all the powerhouses on the first floor to tremble. However, at this time, Lin Ling and the others also walked down the stairs from the second floor. Wherever they passed, everyone subconsciously made way for them. Those who had cursed at Tianao before, under Tianao's fierce glare, did not dare to raise their heads and look at him. After Lin Ling and the others left the restaurant, they also walked down the street. However, Lin Ling also noticed the resentful eyes of Ting Feng Qiuyu on the ground. Chapter 3872. Enter the Ancient Dragon Desolate Land. As soon as these words were spoken, the street fell silent. Ting Feng Qiuyu's eyes widened in disbelief. He naturally knew who Lin Ling was, but he never imagined that Lin Ling's strength would be so powerful. He was several times stronger than him. He believed that he was the 9th best newcomer, but Lin Ling was probably in the top 3 newcomers. He was even more certain that Lin Ling was one of the strongest people in the Shensan Hall. As for those people in the restaurant who had previously evaluated Lin Ling, they were all scared to the point of breaking out in a cold sweat. Heavens, they actually dared to speak nonsense in front of Lin Ling? Not to mention that Lin Ling was inferior to Ting Feng Qiuyu. When they thought of this, their legs went weak and they almost fainted. Wind Snow Academy's Lin Ling, the expert who defeated Duan Wu Hen. He's really powerful. His strength is clearly stronger than when he was in the E-Garden because he defeated an 8th grade talent effortlessly. Yeah, I can also see that he hasn't used his true strength at all. After a while, the crowd began to discuss among themselves. I heard that he's going to fight with Longyang. Although he's not as good as Longyang, his strength isn't just for show. Someone suddenly shouted, causing the entire street to become even more silent. At the very least, the people from the various academies knew that Lin Ling had entered the top 300 of the Heavenly Stairway. Regarding this, other than jealousy, what was left was reverence. Moreover, they were very curious about Lin Ling's ultimate strength. At this moment, Lin Ling and the rest had already found another restaurant. They stayed there that night and quietly waited for the opening of the Ancient Dragon Wasteland the next day. On the same night, Lin Ling sat with his legs crossed. Currently, his 6 stanchions had all reached the 6th layer martial progenitor realm. Thus he was able to enter the Dragon Ancient Desolate Land at his peak. And the experts gathered in the Dragon Ancient Wasteland were probably not weak. There should be a lot of experts ranked in the top 300 of the Divine List, including some old monsters. These experts were not on the Divine List, but their strength should not be underestimated. In addition, the experts from the 9 prefectures' 10 evils, the Duan clan, Miao Shen's true disciples, and the Heaven-Seeking Alliance were not to be underestimated either. With Lin Ling's current strength, there was nothing to be proud of in the Dragon Ancient Wasteland. However, what Lin Ling cared about the most was still the Immortal Temple. I don't know what kind of treasures are in the Kurishin Shop of God, or how to buy them. If I can find the treasures I need, then my strength will be greatly improved. However, I'm already late by 3 months. Some of the warriors who arrived first have obviously taken advantage of me. Lin Ling mumbled to himself. The next day, the ancient city was bustling with noise and excitement. All the martial artists had woken up early and were walking towards a huge plaza. Behind the plaza was a gap, which was obviously the entrance to the ancient dragon wasteland. The huge gap was about 200 meters wide, with colorful lights on its surface. It looked sacred, but it also prevented anyone from getting close. Looking at the people walking around, most of them were experts from the academy. They were in groups of 3 to 5, forming an alliance. Lin Ling, why don't we form an alliance too? Zhongjin suddenly said as he followed Lin Ling, Tian'ao, and the rest nodded their heads immediately. If they were to join other alliances and be bullied, they would not be able to take it. Therefore, they might as well form an alliance with Lin Ling. Lin Ling did not care about alliances. However, since it was mentioned, he nodded his head and said, "In that case, why don't we call it the God Slayer Alliance?" All right. Tian'ao and the rest had no objections. They did not care about the name of the alliance, as long as they could form an alliance. Then, they looked around and saw that the surroundings were filled with passionate voices. They were all alliances. These people were very excited about the upcoming trip to the ancient dragon wasteland. This was because they had come for the god's shop. If they were lucky, they would be able to obtain a great opportunity and rise to the top. Tian'ao and the rest were affected by the atmosphere and clenched their fists. Rise to the top. They were looking forward to it. Today is the opening day of the ancient dragon wasteland. It is also the only day of this month. The next time it opens will be next month. This opening will last for 6 months. At this moment, an ancient voice rang out. At the edge of the gap, on top of a huge rock, an old man in plain clothes stood there quietly and said with contempt, "So it lasts for 6 months. Thank you, Senior, for telling me. Senior, where can I get a place? I want to bring my junior to the wasteland next month." "Senior, you should be a rank 10 divine paladin." Immediately, the plaza was filled with chatter. Noisy. But at this moment, the old man shouted angrily. Everyone was so scared that they did not dare to open their mouths. "You bunch of ants. If I tell you to go in, then go in. What nonsense are you talking about? Do you think this experience is for you? Remember, this is for the participants under the god's veil. You are just here to make up the numbers. Now, all of you get in." Of course, don't think that going in is a game. It is very dangerous inside. It is more dangerous than you can imagine. That is the end of the Kai Yuan River. You will reach the other side of the Kai Yuan River after walking through the wasteland. At least 80% of you will die there. Those who are timid, you better go home and take care of your children. His words were like thunder. Everyone did not dare to speak, but they were also afraid of the ancient dragon wasteland. This senior is so fierce. Tian'ao and the rest were whispering. On the other hand, Lin Ling smiled. In his heart he thought, that senior is fierce, but if I, Lin Ling, take out some tobacco, would that senior kneel down immediately? Rumble. At this moment, the multicolored lights in the huge gap in front of them flowed like water and reached the ground. Then, a dense vitality filled the air, causing everyone's minds to be shaken. Next, everyone entered one after another. The gap in the abandoned lode was hundreds of meters wide. Searching in the gap was like walking in a canyon. But at this moment, no one spoke. The canyon was very quiet. Everyone looked into the distance, incomparably excited. Finally, they walked out of the canyon. Up ahead, an ancient forest appeared before everyone's eyes. This forest was not lush, and the ground was a withered yellow color. Ancient trees grew sparsely, and these trees were of all kinds of strange shapes. Some people even saw willow trees. This made many people dumbfounded. But then again, how could willow trees grow in this place? However, they did not think too much about it. They quickly took out their voice transmission talismans and began to inform others. Obviously, they were informing the seniors who had entered the wasteland earlier than them. Chapter 3873. Salt Pans. Seeing the alliance members leave one after another, Tian'ao and the others wanted to say something but stopped. Because they weren't familiar with this place and wanted to ask those people. "Let's go." However, Lin Ling knew that even if he asked, those people wouldn't say anything. And this was the advantage of being in a big alliance. Someone had already entered this place and had a rough understanding of this place. They could then inform the people who entered later. A small alliance didn't have such an advantage, especially for a 4 or 5 person alliance like Lin Ling's. It was even more difficult. Everything had to depend on oneself. Tian'ao and the others immediately followed Lin Ling. However, Zhuang Yanming also asked, "Lin Ling, where are we going now?" "Let's go find the shop of God. Once we get there, the truth will be revealed." Lin Ling smiled faintly. Everyone came here for the shop of God. As long as they found the shop of God, they would be able to familiarize themselves with all the rules here. For example, how to purchase treasures. Moreover, Lin Ling knew that the immortal temple must be there as well since all the overlords were gathered at the shop of God. Lin Ling would be able to find a new heir. Alright. Tian Ao and the rest obviously regarded Lin Ling as their leader and nodded. Walking along the ancient land, after a long time, more and more people began to appear in front of them. Clearly, there were many people like Lin Ling and the others in the small alliance. These people either had ordinary backgrounds or were arrogant and didn't want to join the big alliance. Therefore, they chose to cooperate with a few people and headed towards their destination. As for the names of the alliances, they were also extremely pleasing to the ear, such as the Domination Alliance, the Invincible Alliance, the Ranhua Alliance, and so on. Furthermore, some of these alliances came earlier than Lin Ling and the others, so they were somewhat familiar with the ancient dragon wasteland. After suffering some losses, they also roped in other alliances, formed allies, and advanced forward. This way it would be much safer. Lin Ling and the rest were very careful along the way, but they also encountered danger on the way. When they passed by an ancient lake, endless poisonous fog suddenly spread out. If Lin Ling did not discover it early, Tian Ao and the rest would definitely be injured. They ran madly all the way and finally escaped the poisonous fog of the ancient lake. After that, Tian Ao and the others felt like they had been given a new lease of life. They even asked Lin Ling what those things were. Because they also noticed that the poison was extremely terrifying, and it wasn't something that an ordinary person could resist. Among them, Luo Wuchang breathed in a small mouthful of the poisonous mist, and his whole body was immediately paralyzed, unable to move. I can't say for sure either. I feel like it's released by a huge flower at the bottom of the ancient lake. Lin Ling was also puzzled because this was the first time he had seen such a strange plant. As for the poisonous fog, his soul force detected that it was pollen. Therefore, he estimated that the pollen could paralyze people. Next, the flowers hidden in the ancient lake would devour the paralyzed people. Because at the bottom of the ancient lake, Lin Ling's soul force also detected many white bones. This place is not simple. Everyone be careful. After experiencing this unforeseen event, Lin Ling and the others were no doubt more cautious. However, after they crossed a large area, there were even more scattered alliances around. Moreover, these alliances were gathered in front of a salt pan in twos and threes, as if they were waiting for something. Looking at the side of the salt pan, there were quite a number of people. However, Lin Ling and the others could also see that these people were from the small alliance, and they seemed to be preparing to go to God's shop. Looking at the endless salt pan in front of them, it seemed to be desolate and uninhabited. Only ancient plants could be vaguely seen, and in the haze, they looked like devils baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. 6 people? However, when Lin Ling and the others approached the salt pan, someone took the initiative to greet them. Looking around, there were a total of 4 people, and they seemed to be from the same small alliance. Moreover, looking at their clothes, they seemed to be from different schools. It's like this. We are planning to go to God's shop in the middle of the wasteland. So, we would like to ask if you would like to go with us, and we can be allies. The leader was very tall, and he had a thick beard. After walking over, he laughed heartily. God's shop? Tian Ao and the others suddenly brightened up, because this was also their goal. Moreover, until now they did not know the direction, so if they followed these people, it would be much more convenient. I can see that you have just arrived not long ago, so you don't know the direction of God's shop. Speaking of which, we also spent a month to find out. Moreover, we know that if you want to explore the ancient dragon wasteland, you must first report to God's shop. The bearded man said again, and told them everything he knew. Report to God's shop? Lin Ling was suddenly puzzled. Yes, although I don't know the reason, the people from the other alliances said so. But I guess it seems that only by recording your name in God's shop, you can start to buy treasures, and record the things you need to buy the treasures. The bearded man continued. Hearing this, Lin Ling nodded. It seemed that they could only go to God's shop first. Then, Lin Ling asked politely, do you know what dangers there are in the salt pan ahead? Haha. I'm not too sure about this, but I heard that the salt pan is very dangerous. After all, we only arrived a month earlier than you. Most importantly, we have been lost for a month, and have been walking around blindly. Speaking of this, the bearded man said with an embarrassed face, scratching the back of his head. Brother, It's all your fault for being stupid. At this time, a petite and somewhat cute girl beside him laughed. Brother? The corners of Qianao and the other's eyes twitched. The girl in front of them was petite and cute, and the bearded man was burly like a bear, with iron-like chest muscles and a face full of beard. Are they siblings? As if she had guessed everyone's surprise, the girl said with a smile. My name is Chen Ting, and this is my brother, Chen Wu. We are indeed siblings, and we are both from Flying Feather College. By the way, do you want to form an alliance with us? She seemed to be quite generous. Hearing this, Lin Ling nodded. It was better to have someone he knew to lead the way. Seeing Lin Ling nodding his head, the girl smiled, revealing 2 cute dimples. She was so charming that she attracted Tianao's attention, and Tianao's face turned red. My sister and I are both half-step to martial gods. In fact, my sister is more powerful than me, and we are forming an alliance. By the way, where are you from? So what if you are powerful? After all, we are allies, and we will walk out of this salt pan together. Chan Wu spoke, and he went straight to the point. Half-step to martial god realm? Tianao and the others' hearts skipped a beat. They had not expected the 2 of them to be so powerful. Tianao had wanted to show off his strength in front of Chen Ting, but it seemed that he had better not embarrass himself. Chapter 3874. God's Descendants. These people should be ranked in the top 400 on the heaven stairway. Then, Lin Ling looked at the others who were attacking the alliance. My name is Wu Jiang, Tianlai Academy, Peak Martial Ancestor. Seeing Lin Ling and the others looking at him, one of the young men smiled and spoke. He looked dignified and his words were sincere. He gave people a good impression. It was the turn of the last person. This person was not tall, with a pair of mung bean eyes that flickered from time to time, and a slightly thin face like a zombie's face. However, he was not polite when he spoke. Tianlai Academy? Haha, a very weak academy. Anyway, it's really not easy to get a place. Wu Jiang immediately frowned because he knew that the latter was talking about him. However, he endured it. After all, they were in the same alliance. He had to give face to Chen Wu. The thin young man smiled and said proudly, My name is Xueqi. After speaking, he dragged his voice and said arrogantly, Half-step martial god, from E-Garden. E-Garden was ranked 4th among the 36 academies. No wonder he was so proud. Compared to him, the other people's origins were indeed very dim. We are all from Snow Wind Academy. He is Tian Ao, Zhongjin, Luo Wuchang, Peak Martial Ancestor, and I am Lin Ling, Mid Martial Ancestor. We are from the God-Slaying Alliance. After the introduction, Lin Ling said lightly. As for the platinum evil spirit behind him, Lin Ling did not explain anything. Chen Ting and the others were stunned. There was no half-step martial god expert? And Snow Wind Academy? This academy seemed to be ranked at the bottom. Are you kidding me? Snow Wind Academy sent you here to die. To be honest, I don't think these people can help us. Xueqi was stunned for a moment, but he immediately spoke. It turned out that they were from Snow Wind Academy. If he remembered correctly, Lin Ling seemed to have defeated many of their juniors in the exchange meeting of the 8 academies. Of course, in his eyes, this was all because he was from the E-Generation. The E-Generation's strength and status in E-Garden were higher than Shen San Hall's. In other words, he was equivalent to Lin Ling's senior. Xueqi, don't talk nonsense. Meanwhile, Chen Wu spoke indifferently. Humph. However, Xueqi did not give him any face at all. If you're so powerful, then leave by yourself. However, Chen Ting also opened her mouth to say something, which made Xueqi finally fall silent. However, her pair of beady eyes quietly looked at Chen Ting's chest, as if she was thinking about something. There's no time to waste. Let's set off, everyone. Then, Chen Ting looked at Lin Ling and the others and said, although the cultivation levels of Lin Ling and the others weren't high, there were still quite a number of them. Moreover, they had spent a lot of time here, so they wanted to hurry on their way. After a while, they also entered the salt pan. Looking into the distance, Lin Ling and the others found that the salt pan was very big. The ground was dry, and there were only strange withered trees on the ground, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. It was very creepy. However, They didn't dare to underestimate this place because Chen Ting and the others had heard that there were many hidden dangers in the salt pan. Otherwise, they wouldn't have cooperated with the other alliances. Indeed, after they had traveled for half a day, the ground quietly cracked open. Then, a toad as big as a calf crawled out. The toad was white and looked ferocious. It seemed to be a species from the era of the deities. White liquid kept dripping from its body and dripping onto the ground. The salt pan was also corroded. Everyone be careful. Seeing this, everyone prepared themselves for battle. Croak. The toad stared at them coldly. It seemed that there was very little food in the salt pan, so Lin Ling and the others were food that it couldn't afford to lose. Suddenly, it opened its mouth and spat out white liquid. Its speed had reached the speed of 1,000 realms speed. This time, everyone's expression changed greatly. Fortunately, they were still far away, so they dispersed. Lin Ling's eyes flashed with a strange light. He stretched out his hand and dodged with Zhuang Yanming. Thank you. After dodging the liquid, Zhuang Yanming said gratefully. He was the weakest in their alliance. Previously, he was afraid that he couldn't dodge the strange poison. Then, everyone turned around to look, and their expressions changed drastically. After the white liquid mist, it all fell onto the ground. The salt pan was corroded, and a poisonous gas quietly spread. One should know that the salt pan had been there for thousands of years. It was harder than divine artifacts, but it was still corroded. This showed how powerful the poison was. Lin Ling also found that everything in the ancient dragon wasteland was very ancient and seemed to be related to poison. Croak. At this time, the white toad let out a deafening cry. Then, the lumps on its body exploded, and a large amount of white poison gushed out like a volcano. Then, it pounced on everyone. This toad is too cunning. Chen Wu cursed angrily. The poison was terrifying, but the toad had pounced on them. Didn't it mean that they had nowhere to run? I'll do it. However, at this moment, the taciturn Wu Jiang dashed forward. A majestic glaive appeared in his hand. The glaive was filled with extremely powerful progenitor force. Lin Ling sensed that the glaive was filled with 80% of progenitor force. It was a very impressive strength. Wu Jiang, watch out. However, Chen Ting and the others shouted. After all, Wu Jiang was only at the peak of the martial progenitor realm. However, even Chen Ting and the other half-martial gods had to avoid the toad. Wouldn't Wu Jiang be courting death? Seeing Wu Jiang leaping into the air and slashing down with his glaive, the toad spat out even more poison. The poison was like sulfuric acid that could corrode everything. Wu Jiang, come back quickly. At that instant, Chen Wu yelled too. Chen Ting could not bear to watch it any longer, as she was afraid that Wu Jiang would be corroded into a pile of bones. As for Xian Yi, he wore a disdainful grin. Even a half-martial god did not dare to interfere, but this kid was trying to be a hero. Was he an idiot? Lin Ling, look. Meanwhile, Tianao and the others immediately glanced at Lin Ling, implying that they were hoping for Lin Ling to lend them a hand. After all, even though Lin Ling's cultivation was not high, they could sense that Lin Ling was the strongest among the two alliances. It's fine. However, Lin Ling shook his head and said he had no intention of interfering. Instead, he stared at the ground behind the toad with flickering eyes. He was not worried about Wu Jiang at all. The reason being that he had discovered a mysterious aura from Wu Jiang's body. The aura did not originate from his talent, but from a bracelet. As expected, as the poison was about to reach Wu Jiang's body, for mysterious words suddenly appeared around him. Xuanwu sect. Bang! Almost at the same time, a blinding glow exploded as a set of imperious white armor appeared on Wu Jiang's body. Chapter 3875. The Mysterious Willow Tree. The overwhelming amount of venom gushed over, but was completely blocked. Instead, Wu Jiang slashed out with his saber, and the saber landed heavily on the toad's head, forcibly splitting the poisonous toad apart. Gua gua! The huge toad fell down like a small mountain. The venom on its body also lost its luster and gradually dimmed. Chen Ting and the others were delighted when they saw this. Never had they imagined that Wu Jiang actually possessed such a treasure. However, at this moment, a figure flashed past and reached Wu Jiang's side, knocking him aside. Then, a water-splitting thorn stabbed down, aiming for the poisonous toad that was about to die. Crackle! After the water-splitting thorns landed, a series of firecracker-like noises rang out. The poisonous toad immediately exploded. It was deader than dead. And the person who attacked also used the water-splitting thorn to constantly search for something in the rotten flesh. In the end he cursed, "Damn it, this kind of god's descendant actually has nothing, not even a treasure." After he finished speaking, he spat out a mouthful of saliva. And he was Xueqi. This guy actually took advantage of the fact that the venomous toad was half dead to suddenly steal it, as if he wanted to obtain some kind of treasure. Of course, generally speaking, the descendants of gods would definitely leave behind precious things after death, such as monster cores or something. However, this toad did not have any, causing Xueqi's efforts to be in vain. "Wu Jiang, you're still not calm enough. A centipede dies but never falls down. A poisonous creature like this can only be killed. If it's half dead, it can counterattack at any time. Sigh, if I didn't make a move, you would have been in deep trouble." Next, Xueqi reprimanded Wu Jiang as if he was the one who had killed the poisonous creature. In reality, he was just kill-stealing. "Xueqi, you have gone too far." However, Chen Ting and the others were not fools. They immediately reprimanded him. "Humph, you don't know how to appreciate my kindness." Xueqi snorted coldly, but he didn't waste any more time. He said, "Let's go." Chen Ting and the others became even more furious when they saw him act like a senior. However, Wu Jiang waved his hand to indicate that he didn't care. Seeing this, Xueqi narrowed his eyes and stared at the bracelet on Wu Jiang's wrist. He knew that the bracelet was extremely powerful. If it belonged to him, he. Then, he put away his smile and strode forward, as if he was the leader, leading the way. This guy. Chen Wu and the others were still furious. Just as they were about to move forward, Lin Ling suddenly stretched out his hand and stopped them. "Lin Ling, what is the meaning of this?" Chen Ting asked curiously as she turned to look at Lin Ling. Seeing this, Lin Ling explained with a smile, "I just feel that there's still some danger ahead, so I want to be careful." It's fine. That archaic toad is already dead. What other dangers can there be? You have to know that the poisonous creature from before was already considered a demon king. With how powerful it is, there are definitely no other archaic demonic beasts in the nearby territories. Hearing this, Chan Wu comforted him. He saw that Lin Ling's cultivation level was the lowest, so he thought that Lin Ling was just afraid. As for Xueqi, who was walking in front, he laughed disdainfully and said, "What a coward. I think that the few of you should leave the ancient dragon wasteland. This is a place for experts, so it's not suitable for children like you. Also, let me tell you, martial artists should move forward bravely. If you take a step back, then what's the point of practicing martial arts? You're just a coward. Look at me, I've never taken a step back in my life." Xueqi's words were filled with sarcasm. Chen Ting and the others immediately turned pale. When the poisonous toad appeared, Xueqi did not take any action. He was just hiding. Now he was speaking so righteously. How shameless. "Is that so? Then I hope that you'll never be a coward," Xueqi said. However, at this moment, Lin Ling smiled and said calmly. He had been paying attention to the front, and now, he realized that something strange had finally happened. Rumble. As soon as Lin Ling finished speaking, the ground exploded. Then, countless tentacles spread out, and their speed reached the speed of 1,000 worlds. The poison left behind by the poisonous toad on the ground was sucked clean by the tentacles. Moreover, a large number of tentacles stretched out from the ground and grabbed the poisonous toad's corpse before devouring it in a frenzy. Just as they finished devouring on the other side, the ground suddenly exploded again, as if it had awakened a monster. Then the salt pan rumbled, and a pure white toad rushed out. It was the same poisonous creature from before, and it was even bigger than the previous one. This gave everyone a shock. There were two of those terrifying creatures from before? However, before they could react, the toad let out a strange cry. Its cry was filled with panic and fear. Then, it ran away at the speed of 1,000 worlds. Obviously, it had encountered a terrifying creature, and the terrifying creature had already attacked it. Just as the poisonous creature ran halfway, endless vines suddenly appeared and wrapped around the toad. Then the toad was sucked clean. This caused a wave of terror to spread silently. Although everyone knew that the salt pan was not easy to walk through, they did not expect to encounter so many terrifying creatures in just half a day. Oh my god! As for Xueqi, he let out a squeal like a pig being slaughtered. He rolled and crawled as he ran back in a sorry state. He was not as arrogant as he had said before. Is this an expert from the E-Garden? Chen Wu did not care about the danger ahead and laughed mockingly. He also said that his martial path was only to move forward bravely. But now, he has turned around and is running away. Chen Ting could not help but laugh. Even the quiet Wu Jiang showed a look of disdain. Perhaps he is the coward. As for Xueqi, who was rushing over, his face was filled with fear. In a fluster, he lost his balance and fell to the ground. Then, he glided over like a dead dog, causing the crowd to burst into laughter. However, with his pathetic speed, it was hard to tell where he would end up. Therefore, Wu Jiang also took action. He stretched out his foot and blocked Xueqi's ferocious momentum. However, this foot blocked Xueqi's cheek. From the side, it looked as if Wu Jiang had kicked Xueqi's face. Bang! Xueqi's voice was carefree, and he managed to stop Xueqi's momentum. Haha! Seeing Xueqi's funny look, Chen Ting and the others could not help but laugh. As for Xueqi, he quickly got up. When he saw everyone laughing, he was obviously angry, but he could not vent his anger. Remove the footprint on your face. You look a little pitiful. At this time, Tian Ao suddenly reminded Xueqi. His words stunned Xueqi. Then, his forehead was full of green veins. Footprint on my face. Chapter 3876. Wild Willow. Just as Xueqi was about to explode, Lin Ling spoke. Coward, if you don't want to die, then scream. I have a feeling that the monster in front of us will kill you first. Xueqi's face turned pale instantly and he dared not speak again. With his strength, he could naturally sense that the terrifying existence in front of them was extremely powerful. The others gradually calmed down and looked ahead. For a moment, they did not dare to act rashly. Lin Ling, that is Wild Willow, a deity's remnant of the same level as Realm Scorpion. Beside him, the silent giant ghost suddenly spoke. Wild Willow. Lin Ling was shocked and asked quietly, what level of strength is it? Middle stage martial god realm. More powerful than the platinum evil spirit. The giant ghost spoke again. His words made Lin Ling's face turn solemn as he looked ahead. In front of them was a hazy poisonous fog. A huge figure was like a ghost, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Countless vines were scattered on the ground like thick strands of hair. Moreover, as the poisonous fog dispersed, an ancient tree finally appeared. Upon closer inspection, this tree was about 5 people encircling it. The tree was covered in rough bark, and under the tree, many weeping willows hung down, looking like black whips. What is that? Chen Ting and the rest stared at the ancient tree and licked their lips. Wild Willow. In fact, it is the real monster king nearby. All the toads are just its prey. Lin Ling continued to stare ahead and said slowly, moreover, this tree has yet to grow. It is only comparable to a middle-stage martial god. It has yet to grow and it is already a middle-stage martial god? Hearing this, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Moreover, the scariest thing in the ancient dragon wilderness is not the remnant monsters, but the plants. Lin Ling said again. He had learned this from the giant ghost. What do we do now? How about we run away? Tian Ao immediately asked. However, Chen Ting shook her head and said, we can't run away. I can sense that there are willows under the ground within 1,000 miles. That's right, we are surrounded. Lin Ling naturally sensed the change as well. The countenances of everyone turned ghastly pale when they heard this. But in next to no time, a spiked club that emanated dazzling golden light appeared in Chen Wu's hand, and he said solemnly, since we can't flee, then let's fight. After he finished speaking, he took the lead and rushed over. In midair, golden light soared into the sky, as if it had expelled all the haze. 90% of the ancestral power. Moreover, behind him, a golden war chariot appeared, majestic and awe-inspiring. War drums sounded, shaking heaven and earth. This was clearly his innate talent. Brother, let me help you. When Chen Ting saw this, she clapped her hand, and then an ancient white bow appeared. The cry of a phoenix resounded, and it was like a phoenix was dancing in the 9 heavens. She drew her bow and fired, also erupting with 90% of her ancestral power, the arrow shooting towards the desolate willow with 1,500 world speed. This was the Phoenix Bow. She clearly possessed the bloodline of the divine phoenix, and it was extremely pure. When the others saw this, they also unleashed their unique skills. However, the desolate willow in front of them remained motionless, and when the blossoming attacks arrived, the willow branches finally moved. The terrifying thing was that the willow branches moved extremely quickly, and they actually formed a barrier. Moreover, although the willow branches didn't seem thick, they were even harder than divine artifacts. Clang! Clang! Everyone's attacks were blocked. Only Chen Ting's arrow passed through the willow branches and landed on the desolate willow. In the end, half of the arrow shot into the willow, and then it dimmed down. At this moment, everyone's faces were ashen. If they used their full strength, they would probably be able to defeat an early-stage martial god, but it was completely ineffective against the desolate willow. Moreover, this was when the desolate willow didn't attack. If it attacked, would they still have a chance to survive? It's over. It's over. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have come here. Who led the way? Salt pans, it's really a dead end. Damn it, I shouldn't have joined these small alliances. I should have followed the Great Alliance. When he saw that his attacks were ineffective, Xueqi couldn't help but shout in panic. He paced back and forth, and his eyes were wet. He was an expert of the E generation, and his future was bright. He didn't want to die here. However, no one laughed at him, because Chen Ting and the others had collapsed to the ground, and their faces were full of dispiritedness. Even Lin Ling's face was solemn. Because of the giant ghost's explanation, he finally understood how terrifying the desolate willow was. It was said that if this willow appeared in the 10,000 realms, any realm would be cut apart by it. It was terrifying. However, Lin Ling secretly used his chaos eye and chaos ears, and gradually heard some strange sounds. He even saw a golden light flickering on the body of the desolate willow, but Lin Ling couldn't see what it was. Immediately, he asked the giant ghost, and then his eyes became brighter and brighter. What should we do? What should we do? At this moment, Chen Ting and the others were still shaking their heads, and their hearts were filled with regret. Tian Ao gritted his teeth and said to Chen Ting, "Maybe we'll all die later, but Miss Chen Ting, when I first saw you, I was already attracted to you. I know this is rude, but I also know that if I don't say it now, I won't have the chance to say it." He wasn't joking, because even Lin Ling noticed that Tian Ao looked at Chen Ting differently. He had this feeling from the first time he saw her. Chen Ting blushed a little. However, at this moment, Lin Ling also spoke, "You don't have to die yet." His words made everyone look up, and Xueqi said in disbelief, You're not lying to us, right? Coward, get lost. You're not qualified to be lied to by me." Lin Ling didn't treat Xueqi well, and he said calmly, "The desolate willow seems to be refining something, so it didn't attack us. This is the best time for us to escape. Previously, it appeared because the poisonous toads disturbed it." Really? Everyone's mouths were wide open. "It seems like you don't have much of a choice, so it doesn't matter," Lin Ling said with a smile. "Then let's escape." Chen Ting and the others stood up, and their spirits were lifted. This was because none of them wanted to die here. Then, they immediately decided to escape into the distance, and even leave the salt pan. They didn't even want to stay in the shop of God. Although the shop of God was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, one must know one's limits. Just as they turned around, Chen Ting realized that Lin Ling hadn't left, but was looking ahead coldly, which shocked her. All along, she hadn't taken Lin Ling seriously. After all, Lin Ling was only at the middle-stage martial ancestor realm. However, she now realized that when the desolate willow appeared, the most calm person was the young man with the lowest cultivation level.